Welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Dingers podcast. It is Saturday, February 8th. You're getting that much closer to opening day, but Dynasty drafts have been going on. They have been finishing. We have FYPD today. Doc and I actually have one in about 45 minutes here, as well as key free agent pickups. But before we jump into things today and give us a full points 30-man recap, I wanted to say hello to Doc and hello to our special guest, Owen. Doc, what's going on, brother?
Well, this is our first podcast since I've had a new baby, and you can hardly tell. I think I look great. My wife, she's a mess, but I'm looking great. No, she looks great too. This was actually a blessing. The kids figure out how to breastfeed. She takes after her old man. We're doing a stand-up comedy real early on here. But no,
I think it was funny. Katie seemed in better spirits a few days after when I was on the phone with you in the hospital while you were dealing with fantasy chaos. Mm-hmm. She just seemed like it was more of a stress-free day for her.
Yeah, it was good. It's been good. It's been a blessing. Our firstborn was just up all night, couldn't figure out the boobies. Secondborn, she's a booby gal, so she's figuring it out. And yeah, man, we got tons of and also bringing it back to fantasy. This baby is she's already really earning points in my book because I was crazy enough to set up 2 30-man fantasy leagues on Fantrax for our Scout the Stat Line subscribers, and I did that within a month of this child being born. It was the baby was supposed to be out earlier, and she was really kind and she was patient and she let me finish the drafts and then popped out. So yeah, brother. And by the way, I love the gear. If no one's watching this, if you're all just listening, you're missing Matt Morris is I think he's working at Chippendales, which I don't even know what that is. I think it's something about Disney, those little chipmunks, or maybe it's something else. I don't know, but it looks like he's got velvet or silk. He's wearing something unique.
To be fair, I think there is the Chippendale show here in Vegas, so it could be. It is more or less that with labrum surgery, it's easier to get in and out of shirts when they're tank tops, but it is silk, I think, or some kind of athletic gear. Owen, what do you think of my shirt?
I'll be a little nicer than Doc. Hope the shoulder's healing up well.
Thank you.
You look ripped. Flex a little more. Take advantage of that. I like it. Is there a hood on the back too? Is that what I'm seeing there?
Yeah, it's very odd. I just went on Amazon after the surgery because getting in and out of a t-shirt was awful, and I just think I bought 4 or 5 different variations of cutoffs. And
Amazon, you looked up Amazon Basics male dancer apparel.
No, I just typed in Chippendales, and this came up, and I was like, yes, I have to have that.
All right.
It looks like something like a boxer would be wearing, while they're
just there we go.
In the gym or something, or just I don't know, ghetto garage studio and just throwing some hands at the bag, something like that.
I love that. I think that's marginally better than a stripper, but I'll take either. And I think one does definitely pay better than the other, at least at the amateur level. Well, Owen, great to have you back on. You are in both leagues with us. Great. Love to have you back. And you got to experience a little bit, I think I would say, of the drama of both leagues. Is there anything you kind of wanted to preface the listener on as to kind of how these leagues went down that Doc set up, and maybe your experience before we get into some of the players?
Yeah, I guess for the drama wise, first and foremost, is it really that hard not to pick green M's before the minors rounds? Because we had to undo, maybe this was Cats, but there's one guy who 3 or 4 different rounds in a row just picked a green M guy, and we just had to roll it back. We're like, you've got to be kidding me. Just set your cues. I guess just makes it so much easier. Other than that, I guess drama wise, if I realized that Spencer Schwellenbach, Shane Boz, and Matt McClain could be had for essentially Christian Campbell, I mean, interesting. I think that was Cats, but just some interesting moves. See some people valuing some players differently. But other than that, I think that's all I got for drama wise. Pretty smooth, relatively smooth drafts.
Doc, what did you think? I thought there were some trades that were really interesting as well. Both leagues, a lot of real high minor league value being traded for major league players. We saw in one of the leagues, James White go for Bryce Harper. Picks were going back and forth. PCA was involved. Owen had mentioned, 3 big time major league pitchers who I think will provide good value being traded as well. Do you think some of these trades are short-sighted and maybe post-draft excitement, or do you think there is value that is being had in both sides?
Someone's getting value. I don't know, which side it's going to be. It's been great because you want your leagues to be filled with trades, and frankly, folks, I can't tell you this enough. Get your leagues away from vetoing trades. Last worst case scenario, if you're vetoing a trade, it means there's someone who's either colluding, or in this case, it's 30-teamer. We're trying to get all our subscribers in, and maybe there's a guy who's like out of his element. And frankly, if that's happening, if there's a bunch of sharks, if everyone knows their ball, and then we can identify there's one guy who's only done a Yahoo 12-teamer before, redraft or something like that, then it's like, okay, you can treat them a little bit differently, assuming it's not a high stakes league. But you have to consider removing them at some point. We did have that in one of our leagues. I think it was categories. Really nice guy, but he just basically in a 30-teamer didn't seem to understand that Rhys Hoskins had value, and so he's trying just to give him away to people, like literally for free. We weren't sure if he was trying to sabotage his team, but frankly, Matt was really kind of concerned about that, and I said, "What kind of sociopath goes through a 56-round slow draft, grinding out, the worst, the pick in the bottom of the barrel of major and minor league baseball just to sabotage his team?" I honestly, I would respect the hustle. So no, we had to do one veto so far on a deal like that. But other than that, folks, it sucks sometimes because I'm sitting here and I'm looking at, for example, Wyatt Langford for Walcott and Wood. I think Langford's probably the best player there, but just knowing the helium Walcott's getting right now and what people assume James Wood's going to be, I think the market value for a trade like that, for example, it's like, oh, I wouldn't have done that. There's been a ton of trades. I'm like, I wouldn't have done that, but it's baseball and it's fantasy baseball, and frankly, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I liked both sides of that, honestly. Like, I think with like Wood, Walcott, one could argue you might be getting higher upside, but with Langford, you are getting the best player in the deal. And I think it's interesting with like a 30-man, there's just valuations are just so different. And you have people who have played like 12, 15, 12, 16, even 18 teams. And like, it's just not the same. Like, there have been a couple. Well, I was offered Soderstrom for Ryan Waldschmidt. I'm like, done. I'll take it. And I think there's been a couple others too where it's like, okay, I feel like there's a bit more premium on pitching than what has been sent. But it's almost one of those just kind of live and you learn. And just if you've been in kind of some smaller leagues, you find out very quickly that short pitching in a 30-man is not a fun spot to be in.
Yeah, the pitching I think is a really good key. I tried to identify that more in points than I did cats. And cats, I did not do a very good job of that. I think in cats, you can peg together the RPs to really have good ratios, but then you're always going to be short on the volume. There's definitely different strategies in categories you can use, but in points, if you're short on those innings, you're going to be short on wins, and that's going to lead to lower points, right? Like that's just the reality.
In general, you just have to do the math. You're in a 30-team league. There are 30 teams in Major League Baseball. There's hypothetically 5 starters per team, essentially. So if one team's got 6, 7, 8, 9 starters for some reason, the rest of the league's going to have to catch up or piecemeal rotate a bullpen, kind of approach, or maybe some, young guns who we assume are going to take major league rotation spots at some point. So it certainly is, like, I can't stress it enough. Like, when people are talking about pitching prospects, your 12-team Yahoo league, you can replace starters pretty easily, and it degrades their value. But in a 30-teamer, it's kind of the opposite. You can never have enough pitching, they say, in real baseball. And just again, I did this last time we did a recap episode about the categories league. I just want to point out there, if there's anyone kind of hanging on by a thread saying, how am I going to gain value or insight from this very random league that I'm not in? Well, folks, what are we talking about right now? We're talking about objective value. We're not talking necessarily. We're talking about picks and trades made in this league, but we're going to be breaking down, how to approach a deeper league. And maybe you're not in a 30-teamer. maybe you're in a 20 teamer, which I would still say is on the deeper side of things.
Yep.
And you'll get some good insight, I think, from this, and maybe just your strategy and your process going forward.
Yeah.
On the pitching side, like that's part of why I did what I did, is like I went just high strikeout upside arms with 3 of my first 6, and I really like my 1, 2, 3 of Green, Jones, and Getty. But like I think it points to like I'm okay, if not doing as great in ratios, if I can get like guys that can get me 200 strikeouts. But I think just looking at some of the other staffs, like teams who went kind of bat heavy early, there are some guys that have staffs just in a 30-man. I would not trust, them, the arm that they have to lead a rotation. So, I think, obviously you're taking risk early by drafting pitchers early, but in a 30-man, it's just almost a spot where you just can't afford to just be short-handed in.
Yeah, let's jump right into it, because actually team 2 we're going to talk about is going to be, I think, the first breakdown of exactly what you just said there, Owen. Real quick though, Doc, do we have we solidified a starts per week limit in points? Is that something we're going to do?
Yeah, we did 10.
10.
I think we did.
Okay.
I wrote it down somewhere. I believe it's 10.
Okay. So that's kind of the preface of this, right? We've gone to daily in points. We are not going to daily in categories. There is a 10 starts per week cap. So even if you've loaded up like I did, and you have doubles, you can't take extra advantage of it being a daily league. But jumping into it, Ambassador of Kwan is first, I think. Is that the correct name? Kwan. Okay. Ambassador of Kwan coming in at number 1, had the 1-1 pick, took Bobby Witt Jr. Doc, I'll start with you. What did you think of the breakdown of their draft and overall team?
I mean, it's tough to argue with Bobby Witt, other than the fact that, Ohtani in a daily league can give you, ace pitching potentially, as well as, everything we saw last year. It just depends on what you think his health's going to be going forward. Will he be a pitcher going forward? Because, Bobby Witt's age suggests like he hasn't had his best season yet, which is kind of crazy. So, frankly, as much as that might be a slight miscalculation, maybe it's not. It's either way, you're winning. Westberg in the second. Westberg's going to be a really interesting guy this year. You have some people, who are looking at the Savant page, and he's jumping off that deep red a lot all over, and maybe an underrated aspect, underrated part of the Orioles' plans moving forward. Especially we're talking about second base, third base, very shallow these days. You can have that flex. He plays both in this league, and so to have that flexibility with a star player would be great. And just you got to hope he keeps taking those steps forward, because there are a couple question marks with the profile. We'll see what happens. Pitching goes after it early on with Bryce Miller and Bailey Ober. Maybe the guys who aren't the sexiest, but frankly, in contrast to maybe Owen's approach, I want innings. I want innings eaters who maybe aren't Lance Lynn, but I need guys out there plugging away, especially in a points league, because we value innings. It actually scores you points here. And so you'll have guys like Kyle Gibson, even Miles Michaelis. He had some great years. Those guys, I mean, and even Lance Lynn, who I'm just degrading over here. It's like, I like that. I like that they're worth something in this league, because it's actually more of a simulation to real life in a way. You don't want to be using up your bullpen, right? You only have so many starts, that you can use in this league. So you want to get the most out of them. Tovar, high risk, high reward. I'm not going to go through all of these, but Tovar, high risk, high reward. We don't know who he is yet, but if he can really figure it out, he's so young at Coors. Obviously, great potential there. I think people are kind of forgetting about Logan O'Hoppe and his upside. He's coming back from a shoulder injury like he had. I think he had an okay kind of under the radar year. It's kind of just it gets a little bit boring after that. Let's go on. I'm going to go on down real quick to his prospects, and you guys can fill in the blanks there. His first prospect pick was Dalton Rushing. So this was the nice thing we did. We flipped around the order from the MLB draft to the prospect draft. So if you had the first overall in MLB, you get the last of the first round in the prospect draft, which is like, you should do it this way, by the way, folks. Split up your MLB and your minor league drafts. It's so much better. Lowers the risk of teams just tanking to start. Although we have a guy already doing that anyway, but hey, you can try your best. We only have one guy doing it. Dalton Rushing, I think it's like actually at 30th number 30 is actually a decent value. I'd rather have him over a guy like who went earlier, like Jordan Lawler, for example, or Carson Williams, or Jacob Wilson. Although Jacob Wilson may be in a points league, we'll have to see how his numbers crush out. But if Russian can finally get an opening in that Dodgers lineup, or maybe a trade, his power is freakish, man. He's going to be a stud. So he's got guys like DeLauder. We're going to see what happens with the health. Taking some high upside swings. I think he's got some riskier picks here, to be honest. Yeah, some of his prospects I don't like as much, actually, as we're moving along here. I'm not sure he's a prospector. I actually hate some of his prospect draft. All right, that's a big rant. Is this how we're gonna do this? We just go on rants?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I got a big rant, so I guess big rants is kind of how we'll.
Yeah, Owen, go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, I got to say, like, first and foremost, like, picking 1-1 or 30th in a 30-man is a very tough position to be at, because if you're 1-1, that's almost 60 picks in between your next pick, and then same thing if you're doing 30, you get that 30 and you get the 1 at the turn, but then you've got another 60 picks until you're on the clock again. So really, like, you're usually, like, I feel like you have a lot better chance of starting with 2 elite players if you're kind of more in the middle there. But I think Whit Westberg was a great start from that spot. I really liked what he did with pitching to Miller and Ober. I feel like you could do a lot worse for 1-2 there, especially in a 30-man. It's not really the sexiest team, but like I think like rounds 1 through 13, I really like a lot. Like Tovar in the 5th, Ohapi in the 6th, Duran and Scott. I mean, obviously Scott being on the Dodgers now is a lot of mouths to feed in that bullpen, but still, I think one of the better bullpens. Like, I like Tobias Myers there in the 9th. Like, you could do a lot worse there for a number 3. Mullins, Mullins is, we may have seen his best years. There's some holes in that profile, but I think at that point you're still getting some value there. Robles kind of had a revelation year in Seattle. Still hit towards the top of that lineup again. And then I really like Matthew Boyd and Jose Soriano in the 12 and 13. And I will actually disagree with Doc slightly on the prospect side. I really don't like rushing at all at that 27-30. I think you look at just some of the guys who went later: Quinn Matthews, Josue DePaula, Zahir Hope, Kevin McGonigal, Owen Casey, Robert Kalas, who I got with my second pick. That's 5 guys right there that I feel like I would have taken higher. My issue more with just rushing there is, where's he going to play? You could argue he's an MLB ready prospect, and that's a full outfield. I almost kind of get deja vu of the Michael Busch situation there, and just kind of going down as a whole. I mean, Chase DeLauder, if he could stay healthy, I don't hate that pick there. I mean, Joendry Vargas, Angel Henao, I don't mind at all. I think Cade Cavalli at 33-30 is just there were some better options available there. But yeah, I agree with Doc in the sense that a lot of these prospects are just some names I don't love.
I do. I want to give some credit back because I was the bad guy. I just actually right after Cavalli. I think there's some sneaky picks here. Rodriguez from Cleveland, he threw a ball to me, so he's better because of that. He's playing Indianapolis when he was on the Mud Hens. So no, but actually I do think he is sneaky. Chase Davis, remember he was a first round pick, kind of overlooked at this point, St. Louis. Wyatt Sanford, not to be confused with Wyatt Langford, but he's an interesting guy, mostly defensive first, but that allows you to develop. And Jeremy Rodriguez with the Mets after that. I think that was, and even Mason Barnett came on strong late, and Oakland needs pitching. So that's like a nice stretch. And Jonah Tong was actually before all that, and that's a real sneaky pick. Think Jonah Tong could do some damage. Underrated guy. Real quick, Owen. So I would say that the Bush thing, that's not the first time I've heard that one. And people are starting to whisper about, is this what's going to happen again? And maybe it is. But I would say Dalton Rushing is 23 years old. A little bit different. He's not really in that older prospect zone just yet. He will be 24 this month. But, injuries happen, and sometimes guys suck. And so we'll see what happens. There's certainly some concern, and it's not as sexy as before. But, like, versus some other names out there, like you're saying, Zahir Hope. Well, he's not even close, right? Like, he's got a lot of development ahead of him, and even DePaula as well.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty high on Rushing, but
yeah, part of it for me is like with prospects, like I'm looking at who's got the highest upside, and I feel like those 5 names I mentioned afterwards: Matthews, McGonigal, Kalaz, Rush, Hope, DePaula. Those are all guys I would have gone higher than Rushing there. Like Rushing for me is around my in my 50s overall prospects. Like as you mentioned, just almost all 24 later this month, kind of on the older side. But yeah, more of it is like and I do feel like he can be a solid player, but I just look at that lineup and like, if it's between a guy who I have some questions when he's going to get that opportunity versus a guy, 2-3 years out with higher upside, I feel like I'd rather go for the higher upside there, just having that big league roster established.
Yeah, actually, I'm on board with you there. Number of players that were taken after Rushing. Yeah, I would even have taken Sikora, who went 2 picks later. DeLauder was the wraparound there, as you had mentioned, Doc. Sikora went 2-2. This is the team we're about to talk about here in a minute. But that's the thing, objective with prospects. I think we saw this in categories as well. There were a lot of guys taken in that first, second round turn that were kind of surprising.
Yeah.
You have Chase Young being taken on the 5th pick of the second round. Like that was a shocker to me. We'll get to him, but I'm going to move us along. And I'm going to give us 2 minutes for each of you guys on each team, because if I do not do that, we're going to be here till about 3 p.m. my time.
You're welcome, Ambassador of Quan. You got the most in-depth analysis we're probably going to be able to do.
Yes. Yeah. It's nice to be number 1, I guess. You get to have that with Bobby Witt and with our breakdown. So coming in at number 2, let me scroll on my little sheet here. I also did a breakdown of the points, so I'm not going to talk as much. I sent it out to our league mates. Some people were not very happy with my grades. Some people were very happy with my grades. Just kind of how it goes. So we have Williamsport coming in with the 1-2. They picked Ohtani. Their 1-2 in the rotation is Bybee and Gore. Again, a 30-man, so there are weaknesses. Doc, I'm going to turn it over to you for this one for a 2-minute breakdown.
Well, actually, I think we should do it the other way, because we should alternate. Let's
alternate?
have Owen do like the opening punch, and then I'll do the counter punch this time.
Cool.
I like that. Yeah. I mean, Ohtani there to me is like just, almost kind of a fall into the lap pick. But I got to say, even just shortly after that, some of the early rounds, I don't love how this team came together. Bybee, Gore, not a bad 1-2. Personally, I feel like there were just some better options there at each of those picks. Same with Luis Garcia in round 5, just Mason Wynn, just 2 picks later, somebody I would have taken there. I don't love the lineup, honestly. There's, just Royce Lewis in round 3 is just not a gamble. Personally, I would take as, my best hitter outside of Ohtani. And then you kind of get to the rest of that. Parker Meadows is solid in round 7. I like Jung-Hoo Lee in round 6 there, but just some of those early round picks I don't love a lot. Just getting on just a little later in the draft. First reliever off the board is Brian Abreu. This is a team that's struggled with saves. Let's see.
It's a points league, so if he smashes
Still, I same thing with my pick with the 1-1. I don't really love the prospect start here. I mean, Sikora and Donna I liked there, but Mayer and Montgomery are just 2 prospects I'm not nearly as high on as some. I mean, Gavin Cross at 32-2, like the 5th rounds, you're still looking at a point where you've got kind of back end top 100 prospects on the board there. So I feel like that was a bit of a reach, probably a guy that could have gone a couple rounds later. Grant Taylor, I like a lot at 34. Like that's a really high upside guy. Got some durability concerns, but no questions with the stuff. Even some of the later round picks, I feel like kind of redeemed kind of the prospect side. Landon Marutis in 35. If he could stay healthy, there's a shot he's the Jays' best pitching prospect. And I like Brock Porter there in round 39. You get to some of the later rounds, like Daryl Hernandez is kind of a post-hype sleeper guy. Ben Williamson could maybe even make the opening day roster. Some of these later picks, I like a good bit. Brad Lord had a solid AAA season, but it's not the sexiest kind of prospect lineup, and I feel like there were some misses in the early rounds, but there were some picks there I did like.
Doc, take it over.
All right, just a heads up. Feel free to moderate, come in and give us like you have 30 seconds kind of thing.
I'm gonna do that.
I love that. Okay, so yeah, this guy. I'm gonna start from the back. I actually think his very last pick of the prospect draft is kind of fun. Forrest Whitley. Like, what's gonna? I don't know, right? This guy used to be the guy, which is a scary reminder of as much as we love prospecting, they don't always work out the way we think they're going to. Going kind of again in reverse order here. It's going backwards down the prospect line. I'm a sucker for KC Royals prospects because I just think that they're underrated across the board. Steven Zobac's got some fun potential in round 42, which we start our prospect rounds in 27 as a reference. So this could be some fun value. I think they have a lot of fun pitching prospects right now in KC. Grant Taylor, also a fan. I think Gavin Cross, again, I think you're right. It's like a little early, but I'm higher on. I wonder if this guy listens to me because I'm a little bit higher on Gavin Cross than other people are. And there's some crossover, obviously, with STS and us because we're always promoting ourselves on there. Colson Montgomery redemption. I think he's going to have a redemption year. If so, round 30 is like, okay, that could be a fun spot to get him. And he's kind of doing the same thing with Marcelo Mayer. These guys who, maybe the fantasy industry is not as high on as they once were, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. I love Sikora in the second round there of the prospect draft. And just to wrap it up, I do think that he got Joey Bart at a great value. Round 13 after guys like Camposano, even Kirk and Ruiz and Bailey. I mean, Bart just had a great little year in Pittsburgh. I think he's
20 seconds.
I think it's a sneaky value there. And so that's
probably I can
get
behind that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at with it. I think there's some work to be done and he's been making trades. So we'll see where Williamsport Crosscutters goes from here. He just acquired Keishel and Pasquantino and Garrett Crochet. What did he send back? He sent back Ohtani. So that's worth noting.
Well, that just leads into the next question I was going to have for you guys. Is there any concern now that we have 2 Tommy Johns and a left labrum tear that Ohtani at 31 years old is a risk at one?
So just for our podcast listeners, real quick, just because that's like a really weird footnote, right? Like from now on, I am going to be looking at trades by that team and make sure we get that in sooner. But he traded essentially Ohtani and like a couple like random prospects for Luke Keishel, who's one of the top second base prospects, Vinny Pasquantino, Garrett Crochet, Gavin Williams. Doesn't really matter after that, but he got a decent haul. I think it's a fine haul. Crochet, again, if you're correct, Matt, especially, I think it's a really good haul. Maybe Ohtani 5 years is just like he's still really good, but he's just hitting and he's not stealing 50 bases anymore. So we'll see.
Yeah, for me, health is starting to become a concern, especially hearing that, the labrum surgery was a significant surgery for him. Owen, do you have any concerns with Ohtani's health long term?
I mean, as it stands, not as much as you've kind of highlighted there. I think even just with the bat alone, he could deliver the value to be the 1-2 there. I don't think, he's going to be pitching long term. And I mean that by beyond the next 1 to 2 seasons. But I do think even if he's not going to steal, 50 bases, which I don't think he will. I think this is a guy who could, hit 4 home runs, give you 100 plus RBIs, and still steal 20 plus bases. At that 1-2 with that offensive production alone, that's still poised to live up to the value of the pick. The injury, yeah, I mean, he was hitting fine. He honestly best season at the plate, arguably, of his career, just coming off that Tommy John in which he wasn't pitching. So I don't have as much concern about the injuries there, but. I do think, if you are trading for Ohtani as a 2-way player, that, I wouldn't bank on that long term.
All right. Coming in at 1-3 is Hunter's Bong Squad. What a name. That is just, I love it.
We're going to lose our sponsors now.
Yeah, darn it. There they go out the door. Coming in at the 1-3, they took Soto, followed that up with Luis Robert, Tristan Casas, Justin Steele is their number 1 starter off the board. Carlos Correa, Sean Manaea, Brandon Woodruff. I like the start. I don't love Steele as a 1-1, but I don't hate him as a 1-1 in the 30, right? Like, again, context matters. And having Manaea, who's kind of coming towards the end of his career, probably 3-4 good seasons left, maybe 3 good seasons with 4th, 5th, kind of whatever. And you started off last time, so I'm going to pass it off to you, Doc, to give this breakdown.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, Soto, doesn't really matter what the format is, just a great guy to get, especially at his age. Robert, I'm actually really low on Robert typically, but I think this is the league where maybe you're not hurt by his OBP, for example, and he could be worth more than usual. I'm concerned about his health a little bit. Also with Tristan Casas. What the frig am I saying his name? Casas.
Oh, and you're a Boston fan. It's Casas, isn't it?
Casas, yes.
I just so weird because like I type about this guy all the time. I'm realizing I don't know if I've ever said his name, which is unusual because he's a pretty well-known guy. That's very funny. Yeah, he's a weird situation, and it's like I could have sworn I heard something about his health kind of having some chronic issues that he'll have to manage forever, which is like, okay, we'll see what happens. But great. Could be a good young prospect. Justin Steele, I'm fine with him as my ace in the 30 teamer. It's too much Steele hate. He was a Cy Young candidate in 2023. That's a shot at Matt. So, but then it gets a little bit. He does ramp up the risk again with the health, like Correa and Woodruff. Woodruff, I don't like there in the 7th. Sorry, bro. I do like Minaya in this league because he's going to eat tons of innings. So there you go. We're countering it back. Got some boring picks in here. We'll shoot it on down the line. Max Scherzer, fun 16th round flyer. Miguel Vargas. Well, remember when he was like, I remember his scouting report was he's going to be from Pipeline was like he's going to be contending for hitting titles one day. Well, now we're just hoping he can hold on to some kind of role on the Chicago White Sox. And if he does, if he can carve out some value, I mean, he'll be maybe second, third base eligible, and looks like he's also outfield eligible in our league. So
30 seconds.
That's valuable. So to wrap it up, like Jordan Wicks has a 22nd round flyer. He's underrated. Montez in the late end of the first round. That's a fine spot for him. Zebby, that's good. Horton, underrated. Christian Scott, I hate that he's missing this whole year, but gosh, we all loved him, didn't we? Mike Bovey, not my pick. Casey Hunt, definitely my pick. Wrapping it up, I'm running out of time with. Let's go all the way to the end. Not really too many great picks near the end for anyone, but yeah, I guess that's basically it. Other than Blake Walters, I'll give a shout out to in round 39 as someone who everyone forgot about, and actually I had him ranked one spot ahead of Travis Sikora in my ranks last year. So I can shout out that I had Sikora really high. I think Walters is going to be more of that typical prep prospect where he's going to take a few years.
Oh, and what do you think? Is this guy smoking a bong, or did he have a halfway decent team?
Yeah, I'm with Doc. Like, definitely on the lower side on Robert. I really don't like him there, just even in the league we're in. Like, I mean, you're looking at a guy who last season had a whiff rate over 36%, a strikeout rate over 33%. I do think that really his 23 was more of an anomaly than what we can expect going forward. And I think just at that point, like, I feel like can you get 2020 from him? Yeah, but I feel like you can get that kind of production later. So just at that spot, I don't love that pick. I do actually disagree with Doc on the rotation, like, at least to some extent. Like, I do feel like the upside is limited, especially with Steele as your one. I personally feel like even in a 30, he's a guy I'd more want as my number 2. But, I feel like you've got a good mix of floor and upside here. Steele, I like Minaya a lot with the Mets and the changes he made last year. Woodruff hurt a lot last year, but he had pitched to I would say a Cy Young level when he's been healthy. Yes, there is some risk there, but 7th round, I'm honestly fine with that as your third guy off the board. And then you get Pivetta, who's going to be an innings eater and a strikeout in the 9th. I actually like the rotation a lot. I think the lineup too is solid too, even with just outside of Robert. Soto, Casas, Correa is going to be a risky pick, but when he was playing last year, very solid. Eugenio Suarez in the 8th, Alejandro Kirk in the 12th, I thought were some pretty good values there. Miguel Vargas, as Doc said, I like that one a lot. Like, former top prospect who could have an every role in Chicago's lineup. For the prospect side, I really like Montez there at the end of the 1st. Zebby too. I don't think the stuff is great, but when you have elite command like that, your floor is going to be pretty high. I think it kind of, with just the rotation he had, I think getting a near ready MLB starter isn't a bad look there. Horton could bounce back in a big way. I like Commodore there. Scott's going to miss the year, as Doc said, but I think even even the first 6 picks I really like a lot. I think Bovee is more of just a one-dimensional prospect. I don't think I would have gone for him at 33. But I do like some of these later picks too that he made. Got Edwin Arroyo in round 36. That's a very fantasy friendly profile. Just obviously coming off a labrum injury. Rainiel Rodriguez in the 40th, raked in the DSL. We'll see how that translates stateside. But I have a lot more faith in Cardinals prospects now under Bloom. And then I like Dylan Drayling a lot in round 41. So there was kind of later prospect picks that I did like quite a bit there.
Yeah, I actually really like Nick Pivetta this year, and we still need to figure out where he signs. But I think that was a key addition that you made. You know, when you talk about Pivetta essentially being the 4 there, and kind of having that value of, I think, probably a decent 3 that kind of offsets the Justin Steele pick for me at number 1. And Steele is just, to me, not a number 1 for the simple fact that he's not going to give you those 10, 12 strikeout games. And not a lot of guys are, right? Especially in a 30. You talked about taking Arrighetti. He's a guy actually that outperformed 12 strikeout performances over guys like Paul Skeens. So there definitely aren't a lot of them, but I think Pivetta at least gives you enough Ks where you can be comfortable no matter where he signs. Moving on to the 1-4, we have the Potomac Cannons. First pick was Jackson Churio at the 1-4, followed by Blake Snell, Evan Carter, Jacob deGrom, and then Mason Wynn, who you had kind of talked about a little bit earlier, Owen. So why don't you kick it off with the Canyons?
Yeah, so I gotta say, Churio did go a few picks earlier than I was thinking there, but with his upside, honestly, I could get behind the argument of taking him there. Just 20 years old last year, and had a great rookie season. So I really, I could see the argument where some people are like, oh, this is not a guy that I would take over, Ellie, Gunnar, Langford, Vlad, Carroll. Honestly, I don't mind the pick. Then I mean, the rotation, I do feel like you've got a couple high risk guys with Snell and deGrom. Just personally, not the route I would have taken, but if those guys are healthy and performing, that could be the best 1-2 in the league. Evan Carter in round 3, he's an interesting bounce back candidate coming off that back injury. There's some risk there for sure. I like Wynn a lot in the 5, as I said. I think you get a good closer with Helsley in the 6th. I think that's that point where I don't like going for relievers early, but at that point, I think a 30-man to get a guy who could lead the league in saves at that round is really good value. I like Horwitz a lot in the 7th. He'll have more of an everyday role in Pittsburgh lineup, in my opinion. He's going to give you good average, good OBP. There's some developing power there. Just going down the list here, I like Jurickson Profar a lot at that 827. Same with Gavin Lux at 9-4. I don't love McMahon there in the 10th, just with the strikeouts he's going to give you. That's going to hurt in a points league. I like Bailey in the 11th. I like some of the later arms he went after too. Kochanowicz, Holton. Let's see. It's just going down the list here. And then for the prospects, I'll just jump right into the prospect side. Aiden Smith went a little earlier than I thought, but I love him as a prospect. So I like that. And Matthews is kind of the 1-2. Drake Baldwin there I like a lot. There are probably some other pitching prospects I would have preferred over Chase Petty, but there's no denying the stuff. He could be arguably the best prospect in that red system when all is said and done.
15 seconds.
Going down the list there. Yeah, and then I really like some of these breakout picks too with Henderson, Chase, Dahi, Luis Morejo, Dylan Beavers has got a good fantasy profile. And then just some of these later picks too, Eddie Rinders, Thomas Sosa. Honestly, yeah, I like this farm system a lot. And overall, I think this was a pretty solid draft, maybe with a few slight reaches and some risk. But if all goes well, this could be a very good team.
Doc, go ahead and jump in.
All right, I like his draft, man. I think this is a good kid. He's a young guy. I think he's 18, even younger than Owen here. And he had some adverse things. He had I'm gonna air this out on air to all of our 5 listeners. He broke up with his girlfriend mid draft, and so he was like, I'm not even trying to make fun here. I'm saying like he was going through it a little bit, and he was saying, "Oh, I didn't make the best picks, brother. I like your team. It's good here. I love the upside of Carter. I think he, if his back was not a question mark, how high does he go? Right? He helped them win a World Series at the age of 20. It's unbelievable. The Texas Rangers, that is. So just a lot of things that Owen here touched on Churio, probably a little high for me, but no denying the upside. Mason Wynn, using that speed, he says he wants to get up to 30 to 40 stolen bases this year. Love that. Ryan McMahon in the 10th and at the wasteland of third base. I didn't really care for Ryan McMahon until I inherited a team with him on it, and I'm like, gosh, what else is out there? He's actually not that bad. He's going to give you a boring 20 home runs. Maybe some guys can get on base in front of him, and he gets a little bit more fun. Going down this list, he's got some interesting relievers. I mean, as far as relievers can be interesting, like Holton's, like, okay, like that'll churn you out some points. This is who I saw here. Dre Jameson. Remember him? He's a little bit shorter for a pitcher, but he's a flamethrower. Blew his arm out. He'll be coming back likely as a reliever, but Arizona's looking like a strong team, so hopefully he can rack up a ton of holds for you there. Taijuan Walker used to be good. He's almost his very last pick. If you saw the people who were going around him, that's fine. It's a fine gamble. Again, yeah, I do agree that Aiden Smith went a little ahead, but of where maybe he should have gone, but that's getting your guy. I can't believe Quinn Matthews was still available. What a steal. I love Zebby, but again, with his lack of Zebby went right before Matthews. With his lack of a put-away pitch right now, which no one's saying he can't push one of his maybe his curveball over the line there and turn it into a put-away pitch. Quinn Matthews has better stuff.
30 seconds.
So, yeah, I like what he did here. And then, yeah, Chase Petty, he threw like 100 miles an hour in high school. Now he throws low velo, but he's got way better command of his pitches. It's a weird profile. Logan Henderson, great. Jose, great. Luis Mierjo, great. There was a bunch of guys here. Even Dowdy from the most recent draft, a pitcher in the Cleveland system, which is a system where you want your arms to be. This guy knows his prospects. Took a gamble with Mac Horvath in the 38th. I'm not really sure how it's going to work out, but it's a lot of fun. So all in all, buddy, you did great, and I'm excited to see what he can do with this team. No trades yet from him.
Coming in at the 1-5 is Big League Chew. I like the name. He has a good dynasty name. I love this draft. I thought this was one of my favorite drafts out of the group. He started off with Ellie, followed that up with Matt Olson. And it's a pretty darn good pairing. Points league, you have a little bit of concern with the strikeout. Schwarber follows, so big concern with the strikeout there. But our strikeout doc is not as bad, I think, as other leagues. But I'm going to turn it over to you and see what you thought overall of Big League Chew.
Yeah, so in general, like you do get dinged for strikeouts, but I think we reward pure hitting more than others. So again, that Dylan Beavers pick last round maybe gets bumped up a little bit. Like a guy like Quan probably gets bumped up. Burleson, those type of guys. He made some trades. I do want to touch on those just so we don't, miss his vision here. This guy he went a very vet heavy, if I recall. And I'm seeing here he traded Will Wagner and Tyler Locklear for Jock Peterson and Charlie Morton. If that isn't exactly what I'm talking about, then that's not exactly, like that's a very going for it this time right now kind of move. He trades Shawver and Kumar Rocker for Zach Gallen. The prospectors out there are just absolutely, they don't understand that one, but you're getting a really solid, underrated, proven guy. Praise Jake Bloss for Winker and for Jesse Winker basically and Cameron Sullivan. So yeah, all in all, some cool little trades there, which gives you insight to how his draft went. Although you wouldn't have known it from his first pick, Ellie De La Cruz, but that's just value no matter what, right? In a points league, especially if the Ks aren't going to hurt you as much, and if we're going to give you a ton of value on home runs and stolen bases, yeah, man, you got to love him there. I'd probably rather have taken him over Churio, I think, in this league. Matt Olson, steady value. That's the classic, like, veteran move. Schwarber, love it. Teoscar Hernandez, Luis Castillo, like Luis Arias, again, in this league, probably plays up a little bit too. Yeah, he just went with steady value across the board. Nolan Jones in the 9th. Love that as like a bounce back type of guy. He had a lot of boring picks, folks, but he balanced them out with some young upside like DL Hall in the 15th, which not too long ago, he was one of the top pitching prospects in the league. So, yeah, I mean, Kumar Rocker in the 1st. Again, he's in the big leagues. Jace Young in the 2nd round of the prospect draft. Looking a little bit weird, right? Looking a little bit weird in terms of how's he going to get his playing time now. The Tigers going to start ramping up and making their turn to go for it. A lot of his draft picks were in that kind of idea of like Adrian Goodell Castillo and in Arizona, with the idea of going for it sooner than later. As you move along down there, I don't know if he necessarily has the best prospecting chops. I don't like a lot of these picks. Again, they're probably just older prospects with less. They're lacking upside. So I would say, as much as I'm giving him credit, for having a solid draft. He does need to win soon because I don't think he's built up a solid farm.
Owen, what are your thoughts on Big League Chew?
So this is that team lineup wise is one of my favorites, probably my favorite from the draft, actually. Like, yeah, you're going to get hurt with the strikeouts with Ellie, Olsen, Schwarber, and Teo, but with those with his rounds 2 through 4, you could be looking at 110 home runs between those guys, and then you pair that with probably the league leader in average and Luis Arraez in the 6th, and I really like what this team can give you from a lineup perspective. I do think waiting on catcher would have been a bit more beneficial in the 7th, but I can't really hate Gabby Moreno there. They're still young, and there's a lot of upside there, especially if the back can take some strides. Yeah, I don't love the staff, even with the addition of Gallen. I mean, Castillo is a fine too if you're going to win now, but there's still more work to be done. But I mean, yeah, you could getting Gallen was kind of saves this pitching staff a bit because Gallen, Castillo, Walker, you could do a lot worse with a 1-2-3 there and a 30. I like Nolan Jones the 9th. He can give you some power speed, even if the Ks are going to hurt you. The Ks are really the big intangible with this team, I feel like. But like we said earlier, they don't hurt you as much as they do in some leagues. I don't mind this bullpen at all either. Kopech, Bednar, and I view Estevez as more of a setup guy, but I feel like it's a solid pen. And I feel like late round value. I really like Max Kepler in the 16th. Now in a much better Phillies lineup. He's produced well. Yeah, I agree with Doc. This is a team very much built to win now because I really do not see a whole ton of upside with a lot of these prospect picks. Kumar Roker, Chase Jung were with the first 2 picks. I do not know why you would go Adrian Del Castillo with your 3rd prospect pick when you have Gabby Moreno as your catcher for the long run. I just don't like putting that much stock into 2 Arizona catchers.
20 seconds.
AJ Smith-Shawver is one I did like in the 30th, but outside of that, Leiter, Locklear, Wagner, didn't love those. Jake Bloss in the 34th. I like that one a good bit. And I think, there's a couple intriguing later round picks. Mason Montgomery could very well be the Rays closer. That could be a really good value pick in the end. I like actually Diego Cartaya in the 48th. Like we said, with these prospects, you never know when they're kind of going to make their impact. I think to get a guy, former top prospect, maybe he could benefit from a change of scenery at that point. I don't mind taking that dart throw. But other than that, yeah, this is a team very much built to win now. And I don't love a lot of what he's got coming up in the fall.
Yeah, it's definitely, you guys nailed it. Win now. He got an A from my draft ranking. A lot has changed from the weaknesses and strength that I had for him. But I think the only big concern I have for him, even in a contention window, is those strikeouts and that kind of ebbs and flow of a player's season. Ellie can get hot. He can get cold. Olsen can get hot and cold. Schwarber can get hot and cold. Teoscar can get hot and cold. If they get cold at the wrong time in a playoff matchup, that's a death sentence. And that's very hard to offset in 30-man leagues because you can't ride the waiver wire. And I'm just really hoping with a team that's built to win over the next, say, 2 to 3 years, he doesn't fall into that trap in the playoffs. Because I personally have in shallower leagues where you just drafted a bunch of guys that are streaky hitters and you catch them at the wrong time. And then, you watch the playoffs as you would have won every matchup that follows. Coming in at 1-6, we have Chesapeake Bay Sox. First pick off the board was Gunnar Henderson. First pitcher off the board, Logan Webb. Mike Trout is on this team. Kyle Harrison is the number 2 SP. Interesting, taken before Jose Berrios. Owen, why don't you start us off with the Chesapeake Bay Sox?
Yeah, so I like Gunnar Henderson at that 1-6, and then you look at that 1-2-3 in the rotation. Grayson Rodriguez in round 2, Logan Webb in round 3, and then Kyle Harrison, and then follow that up with Jose Berrios. He's steady, might be a little inconsistent at times, but he gives you innings. I think you can do a lot worse with that staff. Nico Horner in round 4, in my opinion, in points league is a fine pick. He could hit for high average and steal 40 bases. Not going to do much on the power department. And then I really like Noelvi Marte in round 8. Yeah, there's definitely some risk here, but but from a fantasy upside, the upside is definitely there for him to be a 5-category producer. I like JJ Bleday too in round 9. Andrew Vaughn in round 10 is just one I don't like really one bit. I mean, this is a guy who, in my opinion, is closer to a DFA than regular playing time, even on a team like Chicago. Just getting a little down the list here. The bullpen is definitely a weak spot in my opinion. Outside of Cano, to me, there's just not really a going to get a lot of holds or get a lot of saves reliever in this bullpen. On the prospect side, I do like his work getting Bubba Chandler at the end of that first round there. I do feel like there were some better options than Condon on that turn there, but I can get behind it. You might have the highest upside in the first year player class. Davison De Los Santos to me in round 29 is just I would not have gone anywhere near that. We saw his numbers drop off, fall in the PCL. The Ks are there. I mean, to me, a best case outcome is a Jake Berger type outcome, and that's just not somebody I want with my third prospect pick. And then I mean, he's kind of got a type arguably because you follow that up with Brock Wilken, but I do like his next two with Hurston Waldrop and Yoelin Cespedes. Rainer Arias is another one I like in round 34. Yanquiel Fernandez too. He's definitely got a type. And then I also like some of these later round picks too, with Ramon Ramirez and Dylan Head. Head was traded to Miami in that Arias trade, got hurt. And then some of these later round picks, Ryan Forcucci with the Astros, heard some good things, seen some good things. But yeah, I feel like the farm system could be a little bit better, but there are some picks here that I like. And obviously if, guys like Wilken, Fernandez, and Dos Santos can keep the Ks in check, there's a lot of power upside coming up.
Doc, take it over.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I put guys like Yanquiel and De Los Santos in a separate category from Wilken, because Wilken still takes a great walk once in a while. He can take a base, and which indicates better vision and pitch recognition and so forth. So I do think there's more of a. I agree with you. Other than the Wilken grouping, I those are not my type, and I would say that it's certainly high risk. In terms of, I guess I'll start with the prospects. He went full DSL. A lot. Near the end of his draft, I mean, basically the middle part onward. I do like Arun Escobar. I've heard some things around, about him in the 43rd. It's like that's a fine spot to take a flyer on second base prospects, which are kind of hard to find. Usually those guys are. It's also hard to identify those guys because a lot of times they're failed shortstop prospects, or maybe too small. They don't have the arm strength for third, so things like that. So to have a guy who's coming in looking like a sure second base guy looks all right to me. Owen Wild, I've heard some decent things. Yeah, I think Ramon Ramirez is a sneaky target as well. I do. He might not end up being catcher for the Royals, which maybe that's better, right? Because if he's coming over from the DSL as like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and he has to learn all the nuances of catcher as well as a new country, it's like, what is he going to be here at 24, 25 years old? I have him in a couple leagues, so I really actually kind of want him to not be a catcher soon. Especially with Carter Jensen and Blake Mitchell ahead of him. I think that's kind of inevitable. Yeah, it's so funny. He got Condon too. He just wants all power all the time. That's great. The rest of his major league draft, it's tough to say. I love Henderson to start. It's hard to miss with that. Logan Webb is perennially underrated. I can't, in the third round, I'd rather have him than Bybee, and some other guys here. It's like he's going. Yeah, he's going in a great spot there. Nico Hoerner, maybe he's better in points league. Kind of boring. Trout, trade Trout. There's always a Trout believer. I can't be that guy.
15 seconds.
Yeah, I think JJ Bleday is kind of a sneaky target in the 9th here. I would like to be a little sneakier with it, but again, 9th round and 30-teamer, it's kind of deep, especially if this A's park plays to how we think it's going to be. I think in any league, I think JJ Bleday is kind of especially in OBP leagues or leagues where they value walks. I think that's a fun pick. Kyle Finnegan in the 15th. A team is just going to bring in Kyle Finnegan, even though we don't want him to be a closer. They're going to say Kyle Finnegan closed games. He's a closer, and they're going to make him a closer, and he's going to make that pick look pretty good, actually. That's my opinion. All in all, it's like not like a super sexy team, but I wouldn't be surprised if they make playoffs.
All right, coming in with the 1-7, we have Keep It Real Muto. First pick off the board, Aaron Judge, followed by Manny Machado, Willy Adames. Strong 3, Shota Imanaga coming in 4 with the number 1 pitcher for them. Bryce Terang, Matt Bush, Josh Hader. Solid start. This is pretty decent. Doc, what are your thoughts on Keep It Real Muto?
Well, he made a trade. He traded RJ Shrek, no relation to the swamp ogre from the famous movies Shrek. And I guess this other guy, Chase Burns. He traded Chase Burns essentially for Carter Jensen, Jordan Romano, and Seth Lugo. So he wants to go for it now, which I think makes sense with what he's doing here. It's funny. He seems to, he got the Ramon Ramirez and he's got Carter Jensen now. I think that's a good haul because Jensen's good for the future and Lugo and Romano are underrated right now. Burns could be a stud or, he might take a while. It's also, he's never played professional inning, never given a professional pitch yet. And he's going to be going to the bandbox. That is Great American Ballpark. So maybe you could argue he could have held out for a little bit more hype, a little bit more value, but it's an interesting move nonetheless. By the way, Matt, I'm probably going to turn down your trade. And Matt offered me basically all of his other picks, like starting in round 2, for my 1.5 in an FYPD because I have.
Who are you targeting?
I mean, gosh, take someone stupid. Take someone. I want JJ Weatherholt, and I think he's going to take him here. It makes sense to take JJ Weatherholt here. The guy right in front of me, he's on the clock. I'm going to take Connor Griffin if Weatherholt's gone. I think he's got the most upside. I think you can look at guys like Caglianone and Condon or Hagen Smith or Christian Moore, but I think Griffin's got the best blend of upside. He's got the best upside out of everyone there, and frankly, it seems like they're going to give him a shot to stick at shortstop. So a little intermission from our 30-teamer analysis to let Matt know he's not getting this pick. If anything, I might move up to try to get Weatherholt here. Gosh, I don't have him anywhere. I need him. Anyway, this is a separate thing. What do you now? I got to talk. Now I got to get back into this. Oh, is this all part of my time? Gosh, darn it!
You've got 5 seconds.
All right, give me a 1-minute extension. I'll be quick with it.
All right, 1-minute extension.
Gosh, Adames in the 3rd round. Don't like that at all. But Judge, Machado, Imanaga, these are cool picks. Michael Bush, I think a little underrated. Buxton, don't pick Buxton, guys. Just don't pick him. He's not even actually that good, even when he's playing. So, I guess I'm in like savage mode right now. But then I'll bounce back and say the round afterward, Dansby Swanson. That's a bounce back possibility. Max Meyer, if you want to, go for a young guy who's not in the prospect portion, but still pretty young. I think that's fun in the 11th. Casey Mize. We're gonna listen to Matt Morris talk nonsense about Casey Mize being like the best pitcher in baseball after this. I guarantee it. But that's we'll look forward to that. Matt Brash, great bounce back candidate. And pretty late pick there. After that, it gets a little bit suspect. And speak of the devil, he got Weatherholt. It was that's pretty late for Weatherholt right now. 24th in the prospect draft.
10 seconds. No more extension.
No more extension. What else do I like here? I'm just going to skip through a bunch of guys. Franco Ailman, so late. I think that's fun. And the last guy I'll talk about is no one because I don't like the way he ended his draft. Sorry, bro. You had a good run. I liked you at Yoho and Ailman. That's fun. I think he's going to go for it. I think he wants to win right now.
What do you got, Owen?
Yeah, so I like the 1-2 with Judge and Machado. Adames, I feel like, was a bit of a reach there. Imanaga, I don't mind. He's more of at best back end 1 to me, but in a 30-man, I don't mind him as a 1 if you're trying to win now. I want nothing to do with Bryce Terang in round 5. All stats have showed he overperformed the average. Yeah, maybe he'll get you the stolen bases, but he's not going to hit for power. I don't think the OP is going to be all that great. So just not somebody I would have gone there. I do like Bush in the 6th, though, to his credit. I don't mind Hader there in the 7th either. Buxton is, I got to agree with Doc. Like, I feel like he's not, there's obviously the injury concerns, and he's solid when he is playing, just not somebody I want, at a point where I'm still kind of building the core of my team. I like Dansby Swanson and Sean Murphy there in the 9 and the 10, respectively. Yeah, but I mean, even with that Lugo trade, this went on a run of arms from 11 to 15. I still don't like this rotation a lot. Max Meyer has got some big command issues. Frankie Montas does not move me at all. Eduardo Rodriguez is not going to get you Ks. Maybe he'll get you some innings. I don't mind Jordan Montgomery at 14 as a bounce back guy. Don't like Casey Mize there. getting on to the prospect rounds. I do like Weatherholt there. There were probably some other guys I would have gone with over Chase Burns. I just don't like that home run issue with Great American Ballpark in his future. Porter Hodge in the third, I don't really like that at all. Even with kind of the state of his relievers, in my opinion, outside of Hader, just drafting a relief pitcher, just when you still have kind of top 100 and potential more everyday guys on the board. I don't like Hyesung Kim either. After that, Klassen in round 31, I can get behind. Same with some of the J15 guys. Jesus Gonzalez in 32 and Kevin Alvarez in 34. I do like Oki in 36. I mean, Yoho in round 37, I can get behind. But other than that, I really feel like there were a good bit of stretches in this prospect. I like Foscue in 40 if he can carve out the playing time. But other than that, I'm not all moved by the farm system. And I do feel like there are some big questions with that staff.
Yeah, and again, there's holes everywhere. It's interesting when you look at a few of these teams and just kind of how they tried to, I think, patch a few of those you brought up with Porter Hodge, and like it could be a great play, could be a terrible play, right? Because we talk about top 100 guys. When we look back on the last 10 years, the top 100 guys, maybe 10 of them end up being really decent major leaguers, but I think we have seen a better return rate lately. So when you look at Cooper Pratt going a little bit later, are we going to look back in 5 years if he's a starting shortstop at the major league level and say, oh, you took Porter Hodge? That could be a deficit for him. Moving on to the Springfield Cashews. First pick off the board at 1-8 was Wyatt Langford. This pick has been traded, if I'm correct. I'm going to let Doc do the trade talk here. Butler went to 223, Zach Neto, Chris Sale, Marcelo Ozuna, Heliot Ramos. Decent start, but Doc, there was a trade involved. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll let Owen do the opening run here, but I'll be the trade guy. I like that. This is that big trade. This was the Wyatt Langford went from Springfield with like some random Trevor Harrison, who is a Tampa Bay starting pitcher, so I shouldn't call him random. He is, but compared to these names that we're talking about, it's Wyatt Langford essentially plus a TB prospect for Sebastian Walcott, who RotoWire and some other outlets have either top 10, top 5, or RotoWire has them as their number 1. James Anderson has him as number 1, who I respect. And so he's got Walcott and James Wood for Wyatt Langford, essentially, which is interesting. And I I personally think is a pretty good haul, although I'd rather have Langford personally. So I kind of like the trade. It's fun. And so we'll let Owen go in on here. And if he has any other thoughts, remember, this is Cy. This is our league villain. He's kind of a bad dude. He's got a history. He's being investigated right now for trades that he did to Owen's. Owen had to take over a team after it was violated by this GM in another league.
Oh, I'll help you. I'll help with prospects. Don't worry, I got you. Oh yeah, by the way, let me get Aaron Judge, Matt Shaw, Zach Neto for basically Yainer Diaz and Zach Geloff.
Wait, is this what was in like the trade communication? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's what he did to the other team.
Yeah,
but I'm asking more or less. Yeah, is that what his pitch was? Yeah.
No, I don't know. I don't know the backstory. I would never make that deal. And I mean, in my opinion, I feel like it's one of those, even in a league without vetoes, you don't even let that through.
Correct.
Yeah. Anyway, for his team, I like his 1 through 3: Langford, Butler, Neto, Sale, and Ozuna. I do think just Sale in round 4. I feel like a lot of guys will want to avoid an arm with just his injury history and age early, but I do think that's something that worked to his advantage there. Ozuna, Ramos, 5th, 6th, I get behind. I don't like Gausman as his number 2. I feel like they're, it was almost like just somebody I would have rather just grabbed a better bat there rather than reach for Gausman, in my opinion. But if he does bounce back, that could prove me wrong. I like Perez and Ben Brown at that 8-9. Pavin Smith too is. I like that in round 11. I love some of the young late upside picks he got with Ben Rice and Brett Beatty in 14 and 15. I think the bullpen is very solid with Yates, Jansen, and you've got Yimi Garcia and Chad Green, some old guys there. Robert Stevenson in 21st could take away some saves for the Angels there. And I do like some of his prospect draft too. Jordan Lawler and Josue DePaula for his first two in 27, 28. Justin Crawford around 29. That's an interesting one right there. I like Braylon Payne in the 30th too. Even some of these later picks, Brandon Winokur I like a lot. Ryan Johnson, Boston Bateman, Cobb Hightower, Chase Harlan in the 40th. I like that one a lot too. And I really like even just beyond that, Jonathan Santucci in round 42, Juan Valera in round 43, and Kyle DeGroat in round 44 were all targets of mine. Overall, I feel like it's solid lineup. There's definitely some pitching depth questions, but I do like some of those prospect picks too, and I do think this is a team that could win now and in the future.
Doc, are you okay, or are we both fighting over a trade here and completely distracted from this 30-man breakdown?
Yeah, folks, this is a dynamic podcast. So the 1.4 pick, it's just great because it's not live, so he doesn't know what we're saying. But the 1.4 pick is held by a guy who's trying to decide between two guys at the top of his queue. I'm going to guess that they're JJ Weatherholt, and if he's listening to me, he should be thinking about Connor Griffin. But if he's not, he might be thinking Jack Caglianone. Or maybe Condon, if he's not a guy who thinks he's should be discounted that much. It's really interesting to see what he could be doing here. I'm offering him a better trade than you are.
What are you offering him?
I'll probably offer him my 1.5 and 1.14 for the 1.4, which no one can beat because I don't think anyone else has two first rounders. I want Weatherholt so bad because I don't have any. I want at least one share of my guys, and Weatherholt's a guy you have to draft Weatherholt if you want him because you're not going to get him. I don't have Kurtz either, so I want Kurtz in some other league. We'll see. I'll have to play another Yahoo league. You got to come back to that Yahoo league. Okay. Well, moving on with the podcast, and also hopefully we can have an update here by the end of the podcast. I will say that this, our league villain, who I know in real life, I talk about him like this because he is a terrible person in terms of a fantasy general manager. He's terrible. In real life, he's really nice. I've stayed at his farm. I've met his family. Our families are friends. We're good, but gosh, yeah, I respect his draft. I respect it. I think he should have kept Langford, but Butler in the second, that's crazy, folks. This is the kind of thing where maybe you're getting some value, even if you're not in the league. To understand that in the second round, even of a 30-teamer, in the second round, ahead of Manny Machado, we now have Lawrence Butler going. If you didn't pay attention to the second half of last year, or a certain, I think it was, I forget which month where he really crushed it. August, July, whenever. He crushed it, and he's become this brand new dynasty asset, right? Nito, I'm not really a third-round Nito guy here, but it's interesting, and obviously there's young value. It's kind of the idea of, getting that young, maybe post-hype asset who can also help you win now. Then he decides to go full win now with Chris Sale, and I think after that you could tell his picks started reflecting that with going Ozuna and Gausman later and Cortez later. I actually like the Nestor Cortez. I think he's the most underrated pitcher in the league because I looked into Cortez's underlying stats and expected ERA, expecting him to be lower. Maybe he's this guy who's just an innings eater who's getting lucky. Even last year, which people aren't really super high on him right now, last year he actually had a way better expected ERA. It was under 4. It was 3.76 or something weird like that, which is completely acceptable from just rotation depth in a deep league. It's really good in a 30-teamer. So we'll see. He'll eat the innings. And in this league especially, that's great. He'll out Ramos. I'm not sure. Ramos is one of the weirdest guys for anyone to evaluate right now. Are the K's going to be too much? Or is this power going to get him to 40 home runs one day? I'm out on him I'm out on him in the 6th round. I think David Hamilton is a sneaky pick. I think he'll play enough. I think Brett Beatty is not a good pick anymore after Alonso resigned. I think Wander Franco is probably not a great pick, but that's the kind of guy he is. He just loves Wander Franco. He's a big Wander Franco fan. That's a good way to go out on. In terms of his prospects, I think he actually did peter off after round 40. I think his prospect knowledge kind of faded, but I think he crushed it pretty well before then. He fell in love with a lot of 20, 24 draft picks, I think, which will be interesting to see. Not a DeCenzo guy, but I think he did pretty well for the most part. And just my last word will be, I think Jose DePaul, kind of in the, where he got him is a good value, I think.
All right, moving on to the 1-9, we have Akron Rubber Ducks here. First pick was Vladimir Guerrero, again at the 1-9, followed up by Riley Green. Valdez is the first pitcher off the board, followed by Pepiot, and we have the show favorite, Kerry Carpenter. Decent start. Zach Geloff coming in the 6th round. Yikes. I do not like Zach Geloff. Doc, what do you think of the Akron Rubber Ducks?
Gosh, I forgot that I would be the first guy here, so I went to go drink my wine. I'm drinking wine right now. If we're doing whiskey at 11 a.m., folks, it's going to be a long day, and I got things I got to do. So, yeah, I mean, it's a steady draft up until Geloff, and then kind of after that, not so sure. But, I mean, Vladdy Guerrero, Riley Green, Framber Valdez, underrated. Ryan Pepiot. No one seems to know how to say his name. I think his French name would be Pepiot, but you never know. Kerry Carpenter, that's all great. I like those picks, especially Carpenter there is pretty fun. Rather have him than Ozuna, who went 1 pick before, or Turang, who went a couple picks before, or Mike Trout, who went a few picks before that. But then Geloff, yeah, it's like maybe in the points league if you can get enough, at bats, especially in the smaller stadium. That where we're thinking maybe the numbers play up, right? So that could be a sneaky upside to the pick. Goes with Zach Eflin, captain of the unsexy team. He just goes unsexy after this Bogarts. It's like could be effective still, right? I'm not going to go over every single pick, so we'll move on down the line to Cal Quantrill, the king, the overlord of Unsexy Incorporated. He's the CEO. So he goes in the 23rd, which, I mean, if he gets a starting job and eats innings, again, in this league, I had Quantrill in my queue at one point. Moving on to Colt Emerson. Dude, Colt Emerson, nobody likes him anymore. Like, he had one season here, essentially, where he's only had 2 seasons total, essentially. And he got, a little banged up. And the power in terms of home runs hasn't showed up yet, but his exit velos are still great. He's got a solid frame, was very projectable, and he's fast. So it's like, and he'll play second or shortstop. Either way, it's valuable. I think a lot of fun there. And, I'll let Owen kind of, I guess, crush the prospect side of things since I'm getting cut off. I'll just give a shout out to Hyro Wyatt in the 47th as a nice pick, and Cooper Herpes. Sorry, man. Gosh, it just looks like it, and because I think everyone's kind of forgotten about him. He's got a filthy curveball.
Oh, and what are your thoughts on the Akron Rubber Ducks?
Yeah, I really like the start. I feel like you've got two lineup cornerstones with Vlad and Riley Green, and then you followed that up with a good 1-2 with Framber and Pepiot. I like Carpenter there. Geloff, personally, there were some bats I would have preferred a little later that went a little later. Michael Bush, to name one. Even Horwitz there, I would have rather had. But I mean, maybe if he does bounce back and can cut the Ks, that's a pick I can see kind of returning value. But yeah, definitely there's some solid floor over upside guys in the later rounds. Eflin, Bogarts, Andy Pages is an interesting one there. Could be an afterthought, and with just how stacked that Dodgers lineup is, the data's there. Kind of has that post hype prospect fade. I like I do like some of these late round picks too. Lucas Giolito in the 13th. He's got kind of the secondary stuff that Andrew Bailey has been able to play with a lot. Same with Quinn Priester in the 17th. I feel like that's more of a 26 play, but former first rounder, had some improved results once in that trade. To get onto the prospect side, I really like, this is probably one of my more favorite prospect drafts, like rounds or picks 1 through 6. Colt Emerson, Zahir Hope, Cooper Pratt, Dayron Lorenzo, Ryan Clifford, and Eric Batanti. I feel like you can't really get much better than that just to start off your prospect drafts. Even some of these later round picks, Braylon Morrell and Yolfran Castillo in 34 and 35, I like that a lot. Kyle Karros in round 38. He's a bit of a sleeper. I like that pick a good bit. And then you get to some of these post-hype pitchers. Cooper Hierpe, I like that one a good bit. I like Dasan Hill a lot in round 42. He's got 2 quality secondary pitches, above average fastball. I do think there's some sneaky upside there. And then even getting later on, I like Jackson Wiggins in round 50. I feel like you could do a lot worse with kind of upside pitchers at that point. But all in all, yeah, I really like the prospect drafts. I like the MLB team. This could be a really solid team.
Very nice. We are moving on to the 110. Is going to be Lexington Legends. First pick off the board was Corbin Carroll at the 110.
Hold up. I just wanted to get in here real quick that Akron did do a few trades, and I messed up by not getting ahead of that. So we were talking about
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So Akron Rubber Ducks, our last team we just profiled, they did trade Zahir Hope and Cooper Pratt and Jesse Winker to the Bayou Bengals for Adley Rutschman, essentially, and a couple other prospects, or a reliever and a prospect. So that's like, I think it's a good trade for both sides. I mean, frankly, Adley.
So who did he give up? He gave up his.
He gave up essentially the most notable guys are Cooper Pratt and Zahir Hope for Adley Rutschman. Jesse Winker's of some value. And Hobie Milner's coming back too. Anyway, basically, I would put it down to Pratt and Hope for Rutschman, which frankly, knowing that I've gotten a way bigger haul for Rutschman in a league, and so I think he did well to get Rutschman here.
Yeah, I like that trade.
It's coming off of like a kind of a rough year. I don't think Adley Rutschman's had his best season yet. And then the other trade was he traded. What is this? He's got two more trades. He traded Framber Valdez, so he's no longer on the team, for Shane Mack and Andres Shapiro and Gabriel Rincones Jr., which is like a weird trade. I don't really know what to make of that. He also traded his round 10 for Ryan Steineck. That's a good trade.
That's a good trade.
What the heck's going on there? That's a weird trade. I don't even know if I kind of want to investigate. I know that these both are good GMs, so we'll let it slide. But that's like almost a suspicious trade.
I mean, Stanek is not a closer, right? Like we've incentivized holds, but I can't. If you're going to trade a older setup guy, whatever.
Sure.
Okay, back to Lexington Legends. Corbin Carroll first off the board. Corey Seager followed. Freddie Freeman was the third round pick. Tyler Glass now is the number 1 SPA. Jack Flaherty is the number 2, Walker Buehler, and then Bobby Miller. Owen, you get to start us off on this one.
Sorry, one second. I just lost the draft room.
It's okay. I'll keep going as you pull it back up. Brandon Lowe is going to be the second baseman. Luis Rengifo, utility / third. Nolan Arenado drafted as third. I really like this team. You got it?
I got it back up.
Cool.
Yeah. So I like Carroll Seager as that 1-2 start. I mean, I think, obviously we say kind of, a lot of guys are looking long term. This is a dynasty league, but Freddie Freeman in round 3 is a great kind of win now move. There's a lot of risk with this rotation, but I really like the upside between Glasnow, Flaherty, Buehler, and Bobby Miller. I think you can do a lot worse when you're filling out your lineup than with Brandon Lowe and Rengifo. Arenado is, he's kind of been on the decline the past couple seasons, but if he does get in a good landing spot that really plays to his skill set, there could be some value in that pick. I still like JT Realmuto in round 11. I feel like he's still one of the better catchers, at least in the short term. See going on. I like some of these late round arms too. Slade Sassoni in Cleveland is interesting.
Love that pick.
And then, I like that one a lot too. I think Cleveland can play really well with his stuff. And then the prospect wise, I like Kurtz a lot with that first pick. And then, obviously there's some questions with Chase Dollander and Coors Field, but I think at that I don't mind him from a value perspective there. Kierstad in round 29, I like a good bit too. I do think there's going to be a better path to playing time for him this season. I really think the one that might not be talking about a ton is Arjun Namala, but I like that a lot in round 30. He's obviously raw, going to take a lot of development, but there's a lot to like about the tools there. Even I like some of these next few picks too. PJ Morlando and Luke Dickerson in 31 and 32. Even getting on a little later, Jimmy Crooks and Takoa Roby. I like those two there as well in 35 and 36. And then I really, really like some of these later rounds where you kind of look at the last year's first-year player draft. You get Josh Hartle in round 41 and Trey Gregory Alford in round 43. Those I've heard Hartle was a potential first-round pick before he took a step back his senior season. Some scouts had a round 2 grade TGA. So I think for value-wise, there's a lot of upside there. I like Aaron Estrada a lot in round 46. That's all I got. But I really like this farm system. I think there's a mix of kind of some slam dunk picks and some good value there. So it might not have the sexiest names. You have like some kind of post-type guys too, like Graham Pauley. But all in all, I don't really think this is a bad farm system. Shatara Mori too, really interesting as a two-way player. So I think there's a good there's obviously some question marks, but I think there's a good bit of upside with this farm.
Yeah, I like Hartle a lot coming out of Wake, and I don't think it's a similar comparison because they're very different arsenals, and one's a righty, one's a lefty. But I think if there's somebody that could potentially have a Brandon Sproat jump this season of, I would say, like prospect rise, it could be Hartle with his landing spot now via the trade in Cleveland. Again, more of a soft tosser, but I think that's the organization that you want to see. And I think being a collegiate arm, he could dominate a high A or even possibly double A if that's where they put him. I would expect a high A start to the season. And I am expecting him to come out and just carve those kids because he has a good changeup. Doc, what do you think?
He's got an interesting draft. I like this guy. He's a nice guy. The GM here. He seems to love guys who have at one point played in Los Angeles because he's got Seager, Freeman, Glasnow, Flaherty,
Yes.
Bueller,
Miller.
Yeah, and there wasn't. Anyway, he's got a whole bunch. I mean, the other Los Angeles is Adele. A lot of high risk picks. I think he got lucky with Flaherty because that's a great landing spot back in Detroit. I'm not a Glasnow guy. You got to trade him, man, because trade him after he starts dominating and people think maybe this is the year, because it seemed like it was what was happening last year. I never did a victory lap because I want these guys to stay healthy. It's better for baseball. I'm just looking at reality and what some guys' bodies seem to be able to withstand. So, yeah, not a Glasnow guy, not really even a Bueller guy. Bobby Miller is there's definitely, I think that's a good buy low moment. Is that it, though, in the 7th round? Maybe, I guess, if he reaches his upside. I think Nolan Arenado is a great value in round 10. Guys, his stock's going to go up. Like Goldie, people want Goldie more now that he's something fresh, right? Especially with short porch there. Arenado, if he goes to Boston, it's starting to sound like he's going to Boston. That'll be fun. People are going to have more interest in him. There's going to be some trade value or value in general.
Please, no. Don't do it, Boston.
He's good. Dude, he's good. He's good.
No,
you want him.
No.
He's good.
No,
yes,
I don't. I don't want him. Don't move your franchise guy off third unless it means he's I mean, honestly, at this point, Devers has said he doesn't want to move off third. I don't want to alienate my franchise guy.
You get the best, arguably. You get arguably the best third base. He might be the best third baseman of all time defensively.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I can get behind that, but I feel like for just the money you're taking on, I would rather put that towards getting in. Try and extend Roman and Campbell. Get that Crochet extension done before you're just taking on 15 to 17 million money from an Arenado contract for not a position of need.
Well, look at these Red Sox
no
fans.
Thanks.
They want their team to do something, and they're gonna do something, and then they don't like it. Yeah. Anyway, friggin' the Orioles are gonna own you for the next 10 years.
No, wait,
what?
I'm sorry. The Orioles have had a good offseason. I must have missed the point where they let Corbin Burns go and replaced him with
the Orioles. I just wanted to trigger you, but their pitching is, I don't know. They have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing with pitching. So no, you'll probably be fine. I like what Boston's doing. All right, I guess I'll wrap it up because it kind of fused my time here with getting into a sidebar on Arenado. But you know what? I'm sure the listeners they like the sidebars. It's fun. So just looking at his prospects real quick. Espino again, bro. This guy doesn't believe in injuries, I guess, but I like some of his other picks. Jimmy Crooks is someone I didn't have on my top 100, and that was an oversight. He's on my top 100. I think I might have him in my top 80 now if I had to redo it, and I will redo it. Luke Dickerson, love him. I think that's great value. Orlando is he's not getting the Carter Johnson treatment, but he's still getting a bit of a drop in value. In market value just from being in the Miami organization. But, I think in round 31, it's a good time to find out.
All right, Owen, what do you really think of Arenado's situation before we move on? Do you think he ends up in Boston? Do you think he stays in St. Louis? I want to touch on that real quick because we're in February now. You clearly showcased your feelings as a Red Sox fan for not having him. Where do you think he lands?
I do think, I do think the Red Sox are, the fit is there. Obviously, Chaim Bloom now with the Cardinals knows that farm system. He's going to be a guy that they're going to call about. My problem with it, if the price is right, it's not a move that I completely resent. I think it's more a move just to settle the nerves of the fan base with a big name, and then it creates a big roster killer because then you have then that probably pushes Devers to some DH reps. You still got Yoshida's money. Nobody's going to take on that contract without the Red Sox paying down a lot of it. And especially, I do not like the Arenado move even more if it means they're dealing Tristan Casas, which is just a senseless move. They've tried to do that twice this offseason. I just don't like really what I'm seeing with how they're valuing Casas versus being willing to take on somebody like Arenado. I just don't. I think it creates a roster crunch, and I think there's better. I'd rather see Christian Campbell get some of those reps.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to touch on 110, the Lexington Legends, Owen?
Yes, I did.
Okay. We are moving on to the 111. It's going to be the Richmond Flying Squirrels. Absolutely love the name. First pick was Julio Rodriguez. Can't go wrong there at 111. Brett Rooker comes in the second round. Hunter Brown, first pitcher off the board. Alec Boehm, Anthony Volpe, and then Brian Bello. Interesting start. Like some of the picks. Hate some of the picks. Doc, why don't you start us off with the Richmond Flying Squirrels?
This is another good guy. I like this. Some GMs just like you can tell they're good dudes and assets to the league. I think he'll be around here for a long time. Let's see what he did here. He did a trade real quick off the top. He traded a round 4 for next year, Jesus Baez and Xander Muth for Ivan Herrera. I like it. I think Ivan Herrera is becoming way too buzzy too fast. I wanted to get this. This is a guy who shouldn't be going as high as he is, but I think if people have looked into the savant, they've looked into what he can do offensively. I would warn that Pedro Pajes is going to be annoying and steal some reps at catcher, and I would say that Jimmy Crooks is coming up. So there's some red flags. That said, for right now in the next couple of years, I think Ivan Herrera could be a big difference maker. So that's a fun little trade. Yeah, Julio Rodriguez is a weird guy. I think I'd rather have Acuna. I think I'd rather have Skeets, especially in a points draft. But, you can't deny it. When Julio Rodriguez is on his game, it's this could be a top 5 dynasty asset, right? So and I love Rooker coming back, and he's an A's fan. So go get your guy. I actually think that upgrades the pick for me. Like the fact that he got his guy, I love that. Hunter Brown just has really unlocked something. I'm not sure if the fantasy community has caught up yet. It seems like he was really prized as a prospect, and when he was first coming up and struggled so much that maybe some of us have been scarred from it. But Hunter Brown really unlocked something down the stretch, and it seems like it's here to stay. Deep arsenal. I used to think he was going to be a reliever. I don't think so anymore. Boehm is so boring, but maybe he plays in this format. Volpe, so weird, right? What's he going to be? Is this who he is? He's still so young. Seems like he's going to be around for a long time in New York. I think round 5 is probably a good value long term. He's going right in between Jack Flaherty and Steven Kwan. So I like that. I mean, he's a funny guy because he's been hard on himself, whether it's in jest or not. He's like, my draft sucks. I hated it. I don't think he has to be that brutal on himself. Brady Singer, I hated when I first heard that Brady Singer was going to Cincinnati. I was like, that's terrible for a guy who's just a grinder, not electric stuff, just knows how to use what he has. But being a sinker baller, it's like, okay, well, that's what you want to be. You want to be a guy who's more of a ground ball pitcher in Great American Ballpark. So maybe it does work out. And zooming along down here and maybe touch on some deeper picks. Dylan Carlson around 22. That would be fun. And just like the Ryan O'Hearn kind of thing. Like all of a sudden the career is resurrected. I'm rooting for that story. Noah Schultz, the 20th overall prospect pick. I'm good with that. McGonigal next. Love it. Teal would have loved it if he was still in Boston, but I don't because he's in Chicago. Cole Young. I actually think that's a good spot for him to go. Sal Stewart, great. No, everyone's forgot about Sal. Gary Hill. I actually think his name was Gary Hill, which would have been way funnier. I don't know why everyone likes him. He's got notes. It's a situation where I'm just I don't get the excitement about him. Maybe Owen has thoughts. Carson Bench goes a little bit later. He's got some hype. Drew Beam, he's the one Kansas City Royals prospect I haven't got a hold of. Frank Mazzucato, he still exists in round 49. I love the pick there. I think he was a first round draft
10
pick.
seconds.
I think he's still got potential. Listen, pal, I knew there was 10 seconds left. I'm on the ball right now.
But a minute over. I'm going to give you 10 seconds.
Okay. Well, we did a whole sidebar. That's my thoughts. Those are my thoughts.
Owen, what do you got?
I mean, it's an interesting draft for sure. I they're not some of my guys in the early rounds, but I like Rodriguez Ripper as a 1-2. I think Brown is a guy that I'm fine with him as my 1, contrary to maybe some popular belief. But you take out you look at him from like June onward last season, he was an ace. And he'll give you he can give you potentially even 200 strikeouts. He'll give you the innings. I do think that he's a guy I'd be perfectly fine just putting the hands of my rotation on. I don't love Bowman the 4th. I agree with Doc that even though I'm not a big Volpe guy, young and just in the 5th round, you can do a lot worse there. Brayan Bello in the 6th is interesting. He's been a guy I feel like we've been having to take the next step for a couple of years now. I don't mind it there. Sean Well in the 7th, I like a good bit as well. Singer in the 8th, not as much. I do like Gonzalez and Cutter Crawford with that 9-10 there. Moving on, get to the prospect side. Love Schultz at that 20th. No, honestly, I have him as a top 10 prospect. I do think just get him at that range, really good value, and follow that up with McGonigal. That's a great start right there. I agree with Doc. I don't love Teal as much, but he can still be a very, very good hitting catcher with 20 home run power. So I don't mind it there. Cole Young, I'm not all that thrilled about, but at that point, I can get behind it. Gary Gilhill and Sal Stewart, 31 and 32. I like that a lot. Same with Charlie Soto and Carson Bench with 33 and 34. Bench is one of my kind of sleeper first-year player draft prospects. I like him a lot. See, damn it, lost my spot. Even getting on some of the later rounds, we traded Xander Muth, but get him in round 39. I like Carson Whisenhunt too in round 37. He's had some injuries last season, but that changeup is the best in the minor leagues, in my opinion. He'll carve out a role one way or another. Drew Beam in round 43. I like that one a good bit too. Definitely a floor over upside guy, but he'll give you innings, just coming off that strong performance in the postseason for Tennessee last season. And I actually agree with Doc. I like Mazzucato there too. There's definitely some question marks there, durability being a big one. But the Royals have kind of had some success with kind of secondary pitchers lately with Lugo and Waka. So, at that point in the draft, I like that pick. There's some interesting guys in this farm system. I'll give them that. Other than that, I think it's a solid draft. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what direction this team's going.
Moving on to the 112, Tinseltown took Acuna, followed by Marte. Like those two pairings, went really ballsy with Clase in the 3rd round, Will Smith, Kwan, Fitzgerald, and then Norby. Getting Iglesias later, that's an interesting look. Clase and then Iglesias, 5 picks different. Owen, start us off with Tinseltown.
I'm just going to cut in here. I'm going to cut in here because it's the trade alert.
Did you get it?
Guy he's been doing some. No. I'll do that again when I do the trade because I'm going to. I want that trade. But this is Tinseltown made a few trades, so I just want to get on top of those first, and they're interesting, very interesting trades. Has Will Wagner been traded? No, that was just the other. He's the other side of the Will Wagner Tyler Locklear deal for Jock Peterson, Charlie Morton. He acquired Wagner and Locklear. So that's him, going younger off the bat, which will be interesting to see how we view his picks here, right? He trades with Ross the boss, making his presence pretty risky, huh? Trading with one of the gurus, thinking you're going to come out on top. But I actually love this trade. This is so fun. This is Franklin Arias, Samuel Basayo, and Welbin Francisca for Ketel Marte and Jacob Wilson. That is one of the sexier trades you're going to see, folks. Because obviously Marte's a stud, but Basayo is my number 1 hitting prospect right now, personally. Non-debuted. I don't know, him or J Dom. Maybe I'd have to think about it, but I think he's going to have enough eligibility at catcher to stick on there. So I actually want both your thoughts on that trade, and then the other trade he made was, again, interesting deal. He got Moises Ballesteros for Stephen Kwan. So Kwan points, I think, plays up. So that's kind of a tricky one. But anyway, do y'all have thoughts? So again, that's Jacob Wilson and Ketel Marte for Franklin Arias, and Owen's Red Sox antenna are flying out now, and Samuel Basayo and Welbin Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to kick it off real quick just to kind of break down the roster. He is not going to have a very good team. And as it stands right now after the trades, it's Will Smith, Noel at first, Connor Norby at third, no second baseman, Tyler Fitzgerald at shortstop, Dylan Moore is one of his outfielders, and Hunter Renfroe is his utility.
He didn't pick a starter until round 14, just to be clear. This was a very unique draft.
Yeah, he's decimated his. I mean, Acuna will come back and play outfield. I would imagine he went full, pursuit of Holiday in the FYPD next year, because Tyler Anderson, Jose Quintana, Colin Ray, and Andrew Heaney. It just doesn't make sense why he goes in with Clase, Iglesias, and Suarez. So I think after we get off today, I'm going to go and hammer trades for his closers. Owen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty confusing draft. I mean, on the trade wise, I do think that's solid haul for Marte. I don't love Wilson in fantasy. I think he's a better real life player than fantasy player. But to get was it Francisco Basayo and was it Arias? Is that third piece?
Yeah, Franklin Arias.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's you're looking at 3 top 40 prospects. I think that's fine. Like, I think it better fits the direction of his team too. But I think I'd lean the Cattell side. But I mean, depending on just where you are context wise, I do think that's a good return for him. On the draft part, I liked that start, that 1-2 of Acuna and Cattell. I took Cattell at 130 in the Cats league, so I think to see him fall into the second in points was some good value there. Clase in round 3 I wouldn't have even remotely considered a closer that early, but to each their own. I don't love Smith either in round 4. On that Quan Ballesteros trade, I think you can get a bit more for Quan than just Ballesteros. He does play well in a points league, even if he doesn't replicate the home runs from last season. He's gonna hit for a really good average, get on base. Fitzgerald, Norby, round 6 and 7. Don't love it, don't hate it either. I mean, Iglesias and Suarez in round 8 and 9. It's a good bullpen. Other than that, though, I don't love a lot about this team. Get to the minor leagues. I don't love taking even Jacob Wilson over guys like Schultz, Emerson, Lawler, even Weatherholt. Casey in 28, I'm fine with. Trey Morgan, I like there. I don't love Chandler Simpson at all in round 30. Yeah, he's going to run a ton. Is he going to hit enough? And he's not going to hit for power. So I just think there's a lot of like one-dimensional guys he went after in the minors draft that kind of really diverges away from what I'm looking for in prospects. I will say I do like Samuel Zavala in round 33. Getting on down the list. I like Will Warren too in round 37. Let's see, look at this.
10 seconds.
Yeah, Dax Fulton is an interesting guy in Miami coming off an injury, but other than that, yeah, this is definitely a team looking more long term. I don't really love the draft one bit, and I do think this is a team that could be stuck in a long rebuild.
Doc, what do you got?
Well, yeah, it's the most unusual draft I can think of, and it seems like he maybe was just. I guess that some of these guys have never done a 30-teamer. They just want to be part of it because they love scout the stat line. I don't think this guy's clueless or anything. I think he realized after the draft, oh yeah, probably not winning the championship this year. So I do like some of his moves in terms of just kind of, maybe it's prospect by volume sort of deal. And to get a guy like Basayo is super exciting for sure. So I don't, can't condemn the whole thing. And frankly, he'll have a great draft spot next year, I'm sure. So I like that. Connor Phillips, what a guy, right? It used to be like the next big pitching prospect for Cincinnati for about 5 seconds. Now he's getting drafted in round 44. I think that's a great value to see if he can rebound. Yeah, I mean, Nick Frasso, whatever happened to him, right? But Wroblewski, this is like, I think you can tell this guy, Tyndalltown. It's a great name, by the way. I think he's based in Los Angeles. So he's got a little bit of a bias for maybe some Dodgers. Yeah, some interesting players. I mean, Trey Morgan, that's a fun guy, right? It's like the model loves him, probably a great real life player. I wouldn't go after him in Cats, but if I'm gonna take him somewhere, I'm wondering if Tyndalltown has played points before, because these kind of guys who don't strike out a lot and just get tons of hits, they can play up. Like Juan is actually really valuable in points. And so I'm wondering if that was where he's just going the boring volume reliever style. I mean, us shifting to daily, he didn't know this when he was drafting, but us shifting to daily could help, by just spamming relievers. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, all in all, it's it's a very it just shows you the different strategies you can have in a 30-team draft where there's so many players, so many different directions to go. If I had to give another shout out, I think Jock Peterson in round 12 is like crazy value, especially after what he did last year. And he did trade him, right? Yes, he did.
Yep.
And I think he could have gotten more for him if he waited for in season. Everyone remembers that. Oh yeah, prospects are prospects, and this guy's hitting 5 home runs this week. So I think I would have waited on that trade. Will Smith is so underrated at catcher, and then Tyler Fitzgerald, I think is actually kind of underrated too. It's like, oh, he's moving to second base. Good. It's like better. He'll be one of the better second basemen for fantasy this year, I think, when he's pretty young.
All right, we've got 3 teams left before we do our wrap for part 1. 113 coming in is Memphis Blues, taking Kyle Tucker at the 113, followed up by Zach Wheeler, Pete Alonso, Garrett Cole, Jose Altuve, Edwin Diaz, Wilson Contreras. Holy shit. Ronaldo Lopez, Yusei Kikuchi. This team's fantastic, at least from a competitive now perspective. Doc, I'll make sure you kind of just check out, make sure there haven't been too many crazy trades before you give your breakdown here on the Memphis Blues 113.
Gosh, I was like, please say his name so I can have a split-second advantage. Yes, he has done no trades. That's great. Saves us some time there.
This is a crazy compete now team.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Memphis. So this guy is I think he's the only non-staff member to be in both leagues. He just wanted to be in both leagues, which I mean, you have to put down twice the pay. It's not big. We didn't have a big entry fee.
Mortgage the house.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that said, I mean, it's also frankly beyond pay. It's like your attention. And I had to get on him a couple of times because he was taking his time drafting. But hey, I guess it worked out because yeah, Tucker, Wheeler, Alonso, Cole, Altuve, even Diaz, Contreras. When do I stop getting excited? Even Lopez in the 8th. That's a great draft. Man, I'm gonna keep going. Kikuchi in the 9th is like actually decent value. He's gonna give you the innings. Eovaldi in the 10th. Otto Lopez he was part of my championship team last year in a 20-teamer. Merrill Kelly, he's not done yet. Benintendi's kind of, but even then, like in the 13th round now with the White Sox, I can go and Bobby De La Cruz. That's where we're hitting. Like, ooh, I see what you were doing with that. And then who did they bring in the outfield? The Braves. Did they bring someone in? They brought someone in. I know they brought someone in.
Hurt.
It's okay. We'll figure.
Lost this time. Yeah, keep going. I'll look at the depth chart.
Yeah, no, I think they literally just signed or did a trade for a player, and you'll see it. Type up Braves outfield or something like that. Man, it's a great draft. Even getting Brendan Rodgers, Blake Trinan, Evan Phillips, like this is Robert Garcia. This guy knows his relievers. I'm a huge Memphis. You're getting the most flattering review I've ever given. Now let's see if I can rip on your.
Profar.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna rip. Yeah, he brought in Profar, so that's a problem for De La Cruz, and he's going to have to battle with Kellenic to see who can be the best post-hype guy. So I'll do a quick rip on his first prospect pick, though. I don't like Carson Williams that high with the guys available, like Schultz, Kurtz, Emerson. But there's no denying that, especially in our format, I think his power speed could play. Christian Moore, love where he got Christian Moore. He's going to help immediately, probably. Michael Arroyo, weird prospect. How much was it the home park? Are the Ks going to be leveled down enough that he can make the impact? If so, it's 2020 upside. We'll see what happens in Seattle, though. Maybe it's 15-25 we got to hope for. Going down the list here, McGreevy, don't like where he went there. Owen Murphy, I love that pick. Round 33, was it too high? I don't know, but remember Owen Murphy was this Atlanta Braves prospect last year where he was looking like one of the best prospects in all of baseball. And look what they did with Schwellenbach almost out of nowhere, right? So, yeah, Owen Murphy, kind of a sleeper pick there. Well, he has some really strange picks that I don't like, to be honest. Other than that, Birdsell is like a sleeper guy. Malcolm Moore, catcher, I kind of like where he went. And James Woods is someone, I forget, I think it was Clegg who was talking about James Woods. Who's not James Wood, the batter, not James Woods. Is it James Woods? I'm going to click his name. Jordan Woods, my bad. I was going to say, not the actor turned conservative commentator, James Woods. It's Jordan Woods. Kansas City Royals. And so Clegg's got to see him in person and gave some good reviews. So I guess that'll be my final shout out, round 52. Worth finding out, right?
Oh, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I agree a lot with what's been said. This is probably one of the best win now drafts in this league. Get Tucker Wheeler got as the 1-2, Alonso, Cole Altuve, Edwin Diaz, Wilson Contreras, Reynaldo Lopez, Yusei Kikuchi, Nathan Eovaldi. It's hard to really pick a whole rounds kind of 1 through 10 with this team. I mean, it's definitely kind of on the older side, but this is a team built to win now. I even like some of these later picks too. Merrill Kelly in round 12. I like him as a bounce back guy, especially in a third man with kind of pitching, being able to run off the board early to get a potential, like, in my opinion, a third starter at that round is really good value there. Even these late, I don't love doubling up on the Dodgers relievers with Phillips and trying it, but I do really like Robert Garcia in the 19th there. Just getting on to the prospects. I do think Williams was more of kind of a late first than a mid first guy, but he can be a very fantasy friendly kind of profile guy. So I don't hate the pick. Don't really have a big knock on it there. Christian Moore, I like the prospect. The trajectory kind of concerns me. He's a guy who should not break camp out of opening day, but in my opinion, has a chance to, knowing the Angels. Michael Arroyo, I love that in round 29. I love McGreevy there at all, especially to take him. I would have, even just looking at the string of next few picks, Demetrio Crisantes, Eduardo Quintero, Ryan Sloan, Emiliano Teodo, Braylor Guerrero. I would have taken any of those guys over McGreevy in a heartbeat. I don't mind Braden Taylor in round 31. Not huge on the prospect. I agree with Doc. I love Owen Murphy in round 33. This is a guy who's on a trajectory to be a borderline, in my opinion, a 50 overall prospect before he got hurt. And you look at what the Braves have been able to do with pitchers. I like that a lot there. I like what he did in round 35 and 36 with Luis Baez and Eduardo Beltre. There's some big time power there. Even getting on a little later, I like Prelander Baroa in the 39th, especially, that White Sox bullpen is for grabs, but, if he can take over that closer's role, there's some value there, especially when you're looking at just some of those earlier relievers who I don't love. Even getting a little later in this, Jun Suk Shim is, there's no denying the stuff. It's just been unable to stay healthy. Now you look at him on a team like the Marlins. I'm intrigued. There's some upside there. So, obviously there's definitely some big intangibles to that pick, but from a stuff perspective and just where he's getting him, I like that. Other than that, yeah, I feel like it's, I also like Jairo Iriarte in the 37th. There's a lot to like about some of these prospects, and you kind of pair that with just a win now team. I like this draft a lot overall.
Yeah, I have to give Memphis Blues an apology. I gave him a D rating on this draft, and it was from a long-term approach, kind of lacking the outfield a little bit, but I don't think there's anything less than a B unless he's unable to move some of these veterans in, say, 2026. I think Cole will have value. Wheeler will have value. Lopez will be good. I think Eovaldi may lose value. Kikuchi as well. Diaz should still have value. I really didn't like the Carson Williams draft pick. I have him, I think, close to 50th in my rankings because of that 28% strikeout rate. Can't make contact, and I don't think that changes. So at 118, I think that's a hard sell for me. But the rest of the team is definitely a much better profile than I originally gave you, Memphis Blues. So I will be changing your D rating to at least a B minus for age, but I think he's definitely in a contention window this season. One of the best rosters that I've seen, at least for the win now. Moving on, let me scroll a little bit here.
Oh, Matt, trade alert.
I saw. Congratulations.
Yes, got my first JJ Weatherholt share, folks, and it didn't even cost me a 1.14. So we can talk about that.
What was your trade as I look up this next game?
I traded so I had the 1.5 in FYPD. He had 1.4. I sent him my pick, the fifth, and Colt Keith and Jace Young for 1.4 and Maikel Garcia, who, again, I think is going to help. I'm the highest guy on Garcia in the world. Yeah. I think is going to be so useful.
A lot.
I don't like that, Doc.
My team's stacked. Don't worry about it. I normally I'd be like just happy to sit there because I
honestly think you could have got. I think you could have got Weatherholt there at 5.
Maybe, but it'd be risky. He was sitting here saying, "I have 2 guys who are highest in my queue. What should I do?" Like he's sitting here. I'm gonna ponder. I have Griffin in one of my favorite leagues. I think I can get Griffin in more leagues because he's going like 10th or higher sometimes, which is ridiculous to me. JJ Weatherholt is like consensus top 4 at this point. And so I'm like, he's either going to take, this is good to talk about. He's either going to take Weatherholt because he realizes it's probably the logical move, or there was a bunch of sharks in the water here, including Matt. Like literally while we're doing this podcast, it's Matt and other guys are all saying, trade me this pick, trade me this pick. I knew I had to be aggressive here. Maybe give a little bit more. Frankly, I offered even more. I was trying to get Mason Wynn involved too, because I'm all about it. I think that I love the stolen base talk, but I mean, I'm not too worried with paying that. My farm is unbelievable. Keith and Young I have elsewhere, and Matt Morris says I would have given you my left nut for that pick. So honestly,
this is like a common mistake in the fantasy mindset, Doc, and it's like because my team is stacked, I can afford to overpay for a guy. Like I'm looking at it from a value perspective. I wouldn't move Keith, and who was that third guy you mentioned again?
This is Jace Young.
And Jace Young to move up one spot. Like
I got Maikel Garcia, who you don't think is going to ever give me 30 to 40 stolen bases, apparently, at second or third base.
I mean, maybe he can, but like I would take Keith and Young over him.
Maybe we'll see what happens after the season. He had an expected BA of about 270 last year in a bad year. He doesn't strike out.
No, I'll give him that. I mean, I think like upside wise, he could be a good fantasy guy, and he's kind of been forgotten about because of how he was on the stretch. But I mean, if this was like a back end first trade up, and you're getting like a win in there too, or another solid prospect, I'd like it a lot more for you. But I just feel like you're looking at it from the perspective of like, oh, my team is stacked, so it's okay with what I gave up.
Actually,
I mean, you overpaid, in my opinion.
Maybe. And here's the deal. I'm willing to overpay a little bit. And I think if at worst I overpaid a little bit because Jace Young might start the year in AAA, and that's actually out there on the blurb on Fantrax now, which I thought might be a problem. I still like both those guys. They're a bit of like post hype prospect sort of deal. So I don't necessarily not necessarily trying to get rid of them. That said, I don't have JJ Weatherholt anywhere. I want my shares of my guys. I watch a fair amount of Cardinals games. You watch a lot of Red Sox games, right? I'm not a diehard Cardinals guy, but I like them a lot. And if I don't get Weatherholt in any league, it's gonna suck. Dude, he showed up to draft day in a cowboy Western gear. You remember that? I was like, that's my guy. So, that's a guy where there's so much hype around him. If you don't get him now, it's gonna be tough to get him later on.
What I'm saying though is like, you could have probably grabbed whoever. Hypothetically, say Weatherholt is taken at the 1-4, you could have probably traded like Griffin and Young for him. Just my 2 cents on it.
Maybe though, right? And what happens if a guy like Matt, you would have taken Weatherholt?
Yes, I would have taken Weatherholt.
Yeah, so Matt gets the trade. I'm not getting Weatherholt, and it's going to cost me more than Colt Keith and Chase Young. Correct, Matt?
Oh, I mean, I would have asked your entire roster just to be a troll.
Yeah, no, it would have been way more annoying. So that's what this league context. I also have picks 1.14, which is the second last of the first round, and pick 2.5. I'm getting an injection of youth here. My farm system's pretty elite. I wouldn't recommend necessarily what I just did for everyone, but I'm going to stand behind it, even as a standalone trade.
I think it's okay to overpay if you want to get your guy. I think the other context to this, Owen, is Doc's in like 15 to 20 leagues, and if he doesn't have Weatherholt in one, it would be really hard to pass up. But it was an overpay. I'm okay with an overpay if I'm at least admitting it to myself that that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's differing perspectives. Like for me, there's guys I like more than others, but at the same time, like, if the ask is insane, if it's, to me, like, just to get a share of a guy, I would rather like hold on to the better value side than get a share of a guy. Hold on. We talk about this with prospects all the time. Like trajectory is not linear. Guys are going to struggle. We imagine trying to acquire Drew Jones before he made his pro debut versus Drew Jones half a season later. Just a hypothetical example, but like what I'm saying is like I would not get suckered into essentially overpaying for a prospect and downgrading at a position. There's always a time to acquire guys, and even with these college bats with good fantasy profiles, they're gonna have struggles. They're gonna have slumps. Like it happens. Maybe he gets an aggressive assignment. Maybe he just has a bad month. And somebody kind of loses faith. But yeah, I mean, just my 2 cents on it. There's not a guy where I would just say I'm gonna get this guy no matter the cost.
Well, and I think what's hard to evaluate is I think Keith and Young together are probably a decent offer for Weatherholt today as
I
it
agree.
stands. And then you say you put in Connor Griffin into the equation, Doc, if you had taken Griffin. I think that's where the real overpay is. But I think when you're selling Young, who honestly at this point might not be a big league regular, there has to be a question mark there. There's some concern. And then Colt Keith has already moved off the second base position to first base. Like, does he?
I've Bryce Harper there for the next 5 years at least,
which is great. But like, can he even refine that exit dealer we saw at AAA? Like, there are concerns there. The problem is it really is like Connor Griffin as well, right? So, I mean, it's an overpay, but I think Weatherholt, with the data that we have, Owen, kind of what you're saying, I think this may be the last time anyone is acquiring JJ Weatherholtz. Like, if he comes out and performs with 93-mile-an-hour exit velocities, gap-to-gap power, speed, and he's healthy this year, no one's trading a 300 hitter with 20 home runs. They're just not going to do that. But to your point, if he comes out and he struggles, well, you go and target Weatherholt. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left, so let's hit these last two teams. We are moving on to 114. That is going to be the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. Again, hell of a name. First pick off the board with Paul Skeens with a home run win right there. Jazz Chisholm was the second-round pick. Pablo Lopez, third-round pick. Francisco Alvarez, fourth round. We have Paredes from Houston in the fifth. And then Lars Newbar. I forget who kicks it off, so you guys decide.
I'll kick it off.
I think it is Owen. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I'm usually not somebody who likes to go pitchers in round first, but I can get behind Paul Skeens at 114 there. To me, he's the 1-1 arm in dynasty, and I think arguably I could consider taking a Tatis or a Tatis over him, but really that's about it. Just looking at just kind of those few picks afterward. So I don't mind that. I don't like Jazz Chisholm at 217. I would give me Cattell, Seager, Riley Green there over him all day. Pablo Lopez, I like Pablo at that 314 there. The stuff is great. His stock's just even going to take off even more if he gets a trade to a team like, say, the Braves or the Mets or something like that, with the Twins looking to shed payroll. I don't love Alvarez at 417. It's more, we're looking at the number 4 catcher off the board. I think just by that point with Raleigh, Diaz, Rutschman gone, I would have rather gone in another position there and kind of waited on catcher. Let's see, where was I at here? Paredes in round 5. That's going to be interesting with the Crawford boxes there. Newbar and Ray are some risky 6 and 7. I love Joey Ortiz in round 8. That was one of my regrets, was grabbing Muncy at that 815 and passing on Ortiz there. Let's see. Castellanos in round 9. I like O'Hearn in round 12. Yoshida's interesting if he can get the playoff time. Vaughn Grissom in round 14 could be some sneaky value, assuming he doesn't get beat out by Christian Campbell start. And then I'll jump to the prospect side. I like Max Clark at the 17th in that first prospect round. Aiden Miller and Emil Morales are also some kind of high upside with all that. I love Demetrio Casantes in round 30 there. Don't love Harry Ford in round 31, but I can get behind him from there from a value perspective. Getting on a little later, I love Luke Adams in round 33. How you lead in round 36. Even just getting on a little later, Walker Martin in round 42. There's obviously a lot of risk there, but the ceiling is massive if everything clicks for him. I really like I really like this. I've heard some rave reviews about Kendall Jorge, who we got in round 43, obviously Dodgers farm system. I really like this farm system. I think it's this for the MLB team. I have a bit more concerns with that. I feel like it's at best one of those kind of fringe contenders team, but it's a solid team. There's a few bright spots and a few picks I like.
Doc, what do you got for the Iron Pigs?
First, we have a trade he made. He made one trade, which is interesting. I think he's ready to go for it to some extent, or at the very least, we have a crazy guy in this league. He's the Las Vegas 51s. We will get to next time. This guy's nuts. He took like these guys. Frankly, I'm just gonna be honest. I never heard of Keeler Morphe or Christopher Suero. I have heard of a third round pick. So third round pick and those two guys for Drew Rasmussen. What a weird trade, because like I'm not super big on Drew Rasmussen bouncing back fully with lots of innings this year, but stuff's undeniable. So I'd probably take him in this trade just to see what happens. Interesting, good deal for him, I think. So just going through the team. Yeah, I took Skeens in points league. We got to remember this is points. So these ace starting pitchers are going to give you like maybe like 700 or 800 points in a year, right? Like that's a lot, man. And Skeens, I took him 1.8 in a Scott White dynasty points startup, and I would do it again. Friggin', that's just, so you just feel so confident with that, right? And so when it comes to starting pitchers, it's like he's just a tank. Chisholm, don't like him either. Agree. Lopez, do like, agree. He goes down here. I think he actually could make playoffs because he's got a weird, boring team, and sometimes those teams just sneak in. Like Paredes, Nootbaar, if he's healthy. Gosh, I want him to be healthy. I've been one of the biggest Nootbaar guys. I'm kind of out this year. Just like someone else can win. I'll take him in some like deep league where he cost me nothing to hold in the first place. Robbie Ray, a little bit higher than I would have wanted to go with him, but I think he's like underrated. Actually, I know he's underrated. I just don't know if seventh is underrated enough. I'd rather have Ray than Bobby Miller, who went a little bit before him. Ortiz is cool. Nick Castellanos is kind of cool, but like, how will that play in our league? A guy who just strikes out all the time. Love Bubic. I would have taken him over Edward Cabrera, who went around earlier. But yeah, Bubic is like this guy who could slide in as you put him in your RP slot. Although we're daily, I'm not sure it really matters. But anyway, he's Vubic. He jumps off the Savant page, and I've just liked him as a pitcher. He was breaking out before he got hurt. He got the TJ, right? He was only like a handful of starts, but the slider was sliding, looked solid. Ryan O'Hearn, Reclamation Project. Yoshida, like a lot of like guys who you don't really jumping over. You're not jumping over yourself to get. Matt Waldron like had that stretch last year. Yuriel Rodriguez, some intrigue. Chris Bryant, can you give us 50 games of glory? I don't know. I don't have to squint too hard to see a sneaky playoff team. Does it win it all? I don't know about that. But great start to the farm with Max Clark and Aiden Miller. I think those are fun, younger guys. We'll see what happens. Emil Morales, he's playing the long-term game. This is a guy who's really growing on me. Demetrio Crisantes, good value there. I'm getting really high on him. He should probably be in my top 100, actually. Harry Ford, getting out on him, so going the opposite direction. But yeah, Luke Adams, agreed. Someone who's like, he should be back. I think at one point I had Luke Adams in my top 100. Kind of crept out. But all in all, and then Hu Lee, this guy's a scout the stat liner, because I know we've talked about a lot of these guys on our peak projections model top 10s. So even goes with that's a classic. Jacob Berry, remember him? It was a first rounder not too long ago in the 51st round. Might as well, right? So all in all, Lehigh Valley Pigs. I don't know, but he's Lehigh Valley Pigs. Yeah, Iron Pigs. That's a cool name. I think he's did all right for himself.
All right, we are on the final team we'll touch on today, and then we will hit on the others in part 2. Coming in at 115, we have the Greenville Drive taking the second pitcher off the board with Tarek Skubal going 115, followed up by CJ Abrams, Ozzie Albies, Taj Bradley, Brian Reynolds, Tanner Houck, Tyler Stevenson, Ryan Mountcastle, Tommy Edmond, and that's kind of where the drop off is. So Doc, why don't you go ahead and kick off our final team?
No trades to report here, which will be a nice clean delivery. Let's go with Skubal. I love it there, especially in points. Yep, that's the time to take these guys. CJ Abrams, I think we got to kind of – I'm trying to sell Abrams everywhere because he's being treated like he's a superstar. And frankly, at his age, what he's doing is great. But he's not as fast as he has his stolen base total plays up. So what that means to me is what happens if he fills out a little bit more, or he's not going to get by on pure speed. So if he loses a step more, does he still have that kind of stolen base upside, I guess, going forward? That said, still like a really valuable guy at shortstop, so not a bad pick by any means. Albies, everyone likes to forget about him. Look at unsexy. Everyone's higher than me on Taj Bradley, so I'd love to hear about Taj Bradley from you guys. I have some concerns. He lets up a lot of home runs. He's still really young, so I'm not out on him. And I think the fourth round's again in a dynasty looking long term. Maybe that's the way to go. And judging from his roster, he's skewing a little young here. Tanner Houck in the 6th. It's like, okay. I mean, like he was looking like an absolute stud last year. How is he going this late? You know, he went one pick after Arrighetti, which I remember Arrighetti and Bubic were around. You know, those guys were a couple of snipes for me. I had them in my queue. Just going down the list here. Let's see if there's anything worth talking about. I think Lamonte Wade Jr. is the most boring guy in the whole world, but at round 14, why not? Like in terms of like boring, but actually works, especially in OBP league. Bryce Eldridge, 16th prospect pick. Love it. He's a top 10 prospect for me, so love him there. Not as in love with some of the next picks that come up. Like we got here, Eduardo Quintero. It's like high risk kind of thing. Jackson Ferris. I know that. I think it was actually Owen. Owen kind of might have talked me into. This has been like the least arguing Owen and I have ever done on a podcast. Maybe because of the time constriction. I don't know, but yeah, I'm actually in on Jackson Ferris, and I think in round 32. Yeah, that's a lot of fun there, and maybe
you see the vision, Doc. You see the vision.
I'm seeing the vision. No, it's like it's almost boring again, but it's like no, I'll take that. I'll take that 100% when you have so much risk already inherent with the pitcher.
Yeah, we need to argue a bit more. Say something I'm going to disagree with.
We'll save that. Well, maybe we'll save that till the very end here after you say something. Right. But right. I'll wrap up my piece with. Yeah, I kind of lost me about it in some of his mid-round to late picks. But Mason Adams is someone where I don't even know. Like Mason Adams, I don't know if he was drafted in the other league. It's crazy. He's like AAA, put up a great year on the verge of making the major leagues with Chicago. Really boring, 6 feet tall, just low velo kind of guy. But I mean, he's sneaky, and to get him in round 50, that's a good spot, I think.
Owen, what do you got?
Yeah, so I like some of these early round picks. I think you can justify going Skubal there at 115. I don't love Abrams in round 2. Just to me, he gets treated like a superstar, but isn't quite there for me. We saw he was red hot in the first half, kind of fell off in the second half. I don't love that pick there, but if you're going for youth, I guess I can get behind it. I like Albies a lot in round 3. Bradley in round 4, I like that one a good bit as well. Give me 1 second.
Gosh, we're gonna lose our listeners now at 2 hours and 11 minutes.
Yeah, I do like Reynolds a good bit in round 5. Houck in round 6 is fine. I like 8 and 9, especially with Mountcastle and Edmund. I like SWR in round 10. I kind of agree with Doc in that I kind of get lost with these late round picks outside of Lamont Wade. Jason Foley is I like him at 12, but other than that, it's not a good bullpen. Getting on to some of the prospects, I like Eldridge at 16. I think an argument could be made that Clark or Schultz would have been better picks there, but I can get behind that. I don't love Louder in that next turn there. I feel like there's a lot higher upside guys that were available there. I view Louder as kind of more as like the ceiling of a 3, the floor of a back end starter. It's just not a profile I would have targeted with my second prospect pick. I do like Cam Collier in that next turn there. Quintardo is really interesting. Veen is tough. At one hand, you're looking at a very fantasy friendly profile, but not a great hit tool. Maybe Colorado can help that a bit. I love Ferris in 32. Miguel Blaze has got an interesting combination of tools, just waiting for those surface numbers to click. In round 34, I can justify the risk. I like some of these late arms too. Cash Mayfield in 36, Didier Fuentes in round 38. I think that's all I got. But yeah, there's definitely, I feel like there's some kind of some build around prospects here, that some kind of high upside pieces. Definitely a few that personally I wouldn't have taken as high as I went. I like Uremi Cabrera too, around 39. Make sure I'm saying that right. That's all I got for this. That's all I got.
Well, Doc, I was able to move back up, so that makes me feel a little bit better. That was a hard decision between Connor Griffin and Condon, but I got my guy. Well, gentlemen.
Well, hold up. We might as well talk about it. If anyone's here at 2 hours and 13 minutes, They're going to be here for 2 hours and 15 minutes. So Matt traded. I think this is a good deal. It's a good deal for both sides.
Yep.
But we'll see. Jackson Ferris, very ironic what we're just talking about. Jackson Ferris, Luke Adams, and AJ Smith-Shawver for the 5th pick, which is pretty nice, especially if you're in a roster crunch as it is, that might even be relieving in a way. But I think it could work for both sides. I think that, again, that Ferris is underrated, Luke Adams is underrated, Shawver is underrated. So it's actually interesting he went for this, considering these guys are kind of like losing helium right now.
He wanted my 2-1 as well, and I just told him with how much I believe in Luke Adams and Jackson Ferris, because I have Ferris. I have him in top 100 for sure. I mean, I have both him and Adams top 100. I want to say I have both of them top 50-ish players. But kind of league context, I have Juan Soto, and then my second best outfielder is Jose Siri. So this is a 15-man. I am in desperate need of help. I had no real choice, but I think Ferris is probably the best of the two. I think Ferris, being developed by the Dodgers after the trade from Chicago with Zaire Hope coming over for Bush, I think we're all in agreement that Ferris is going to be a pretty good asset. It's just a matter of does he play? Does he have a shot at that rotation within the next few years? Because they're pretty full up. All right, gentlemen. Anything else to say before we say goodbye?
Well, I guess I'll throw it in there. I'm your Huckleberry.
Owen, any outro you want
to? I don't got anything, although I will say I'm a little disappointed we didn't quite get to my team because I wanted the opportunity to gloat about how amazing it is and spectacular it is from top to bottom. I'm kidding. I'll be objective with myself. I had some misses.
You are literally next, but I'm still gonna pause us here because it's been a long show, so we'll have you on this week hopefully.
All right, sounds like a plan.
Oh, and yeah, thanks as always for joining us.
We'll get you on this
week. Yeah, hell yeah, man. And for everybody else, we will catch you next week for part 2.